Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome. So we're finally going to get some more information on Diablo 4 Season 3. I was about to say we're finally going to get information on Diablo 4 Season 3, but no, they leaked that out in advance, like multiple different ways. Little salty about that as a content creator, because if they tell you they're going to release information on a specific day, and then they like totally put it out before that specific day, kind of makes you feel like you got bamboozled. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh yeah, we're totally gonna put it out on the 18th. Don't worry about it. And then like the 16th comes and it's already out, and you're like, okay, well that was weird. And then like the 17th comes and they put out more information, and that was weird. I'm not exactly sure what they're gonna show us in this one that we don't already know at this point. If you guys are unaware, there's gonna be a pet. Everybody's gonna get a pet. It's gonna be a little spider. It's gonna be a little spider pet, and he's gonna follow you around. And there's gonna be like, like a bunch of different ways you could customize the spider pet to your own specific devices. According to what they're saying, there is currently, what is it? So there's 12 different basically main attacks that the creature has. There's 2 slots for those main attacks, so there's a total of basically 24 main attacks combinations where you just kind of like flip in whatever you're looking for. Then on top of that, there's 6 slots to customize those attacks with 27 different things that you can put in those 6 slots. So if you multiply that out by I don't even know what you would do. You would do like 24 times 6, I think, which would get you like 144 combinations of like your robot. But then like it's not just 6 because there's 27 different like gems and things that you can put in those 6 slots. So I'm not really sure. Like, would it be more like this, which is 12? That was not 12 times 2 equals 24 times like 27, which would be like 648 combinations. Of course, some of those combinations won't make any sense, but supposedly there's like a billion trillion combinations that you can make to like mix up your doojank and put all sorts of little things in here and there. Let's go take a look at the things real quick, and we're gonna talk about them because like the pet is the center of all of this. So, I mean, let's have a hoo-ha at it since we've got some time before the actual stream starts. So if we go down to the things, they also didn't show us all of them, by the way, despite the fact that they have a whole bunch of them listed. They didn't show us all of them. There's apparently 2 that they didn't show us: the Evernight and the Genesis, whatever those 2 are. Um, I'm assuming those 2 are, you know, pretty powerful considering they're leaving them undiscovered. Maybe we'll learn about what those are today. But basically, we have what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13, 14. So there's actually 14. They said 12, but there's actually 14. They have 2 of them hidden. So we got to run that calculation again. So it's 14 times 2 times 27, which is 756 combinations of how you can set up your spider. What's up, everybody? What's up, Chatty Daddy? What's up, Baylor Fist? What's up, Novo? Thanks for the membership, Brad. Appreciate it. I'm sure there's a bunch of people here. I was like, yeah, you guys showing up. We're getting ready. It doesn't start for another 30 minutes, so you guys are early. We're just going to talk about stuff before then. Feel free to chat and whatever you want to do. Chat's up on the screen up here, so, you know. um, let's talk about some of these main abilities, though. Okay, so first off, we've got auto defense, which is basically a anti-material field around itself, shooting down enemy projectiles. Now, it says it cannot shoot down boss or player projectiles, but this actually does sound kind of powerful. Um, I mean, basically, it would make you kind of like immune to ranged attacks, like monster ranged attacks. So, like any sort of casted spells. I would assume that there's a large variety of things that are considered to be projectiles, and auto defense could be pretty insane defensively, making you pretty much only vulnerable to melee attacks, which is interesting. I'm not exactly sure how much of this it would remove. Obviously, it might not remove, say, ground explosions and things like that, but I mean, there's a lot of really nasty projectiles. One in particular that I can think of off the top of my head is the stupid corpse bows that are in the corners of rooms, which means that the auto defense cannon might actually protect you versus corpse bows, which could be the most powerful of all. Could be the most powerful of all. Will we keep our levels? What are you talking about? In Season 3, Christopher? No, the way that Season works is your characters transfer to the Eternal Realm. So you still get to keep your character, they just transfer to the Eternal Realm. Although I don't really so much like the whole transferring to the Eternal Realm these days, because they have these special powers that you build your characters around, and then when your character transfers to the Eternal Realm, well, all the powers are gone, and so, well, then you got to like respec the whole character, and it's not even really the same character anymore after that, because you've got to, like remake the character into something more useful. Because all the powers that you built your character around are gone. So, I mean, at the end of the season, your character is essentially gone. I mean, yes, it does go to the Eternal Realm, and yes, you can still play it, but it's not the same character anymore because you have access to none of the same vampiric powers. You're not going to have access to the Tears of Blood glyph, yada, yada, yada. You're going to have to respec the whole character around basically having none of that equipment. So, I mean, meh. All right, then we have Bushwhack, which is quickly ambush, dealing damage to each target. May strike the same target multiple times. This sounds like some sort of like almost like a teleportation, kind of like the rogue's ability to like teleport behind a target and then attack it directly from behind. That one's pretty powerful. It kind of sounds like that, although I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out. Hopefully, we'll get some footage today for the event, which starts in about 27 minutes and 17 seconds, according to the timer right here. So we're getting it close. Firefly, deploy a small construct that lands on the target and explodes 3 times, dealing damage. This one sounds pretty powerful, especially since it attaches directly to the target and it's not really like a projectile that could potentially miss. Um, it does sound pretty nice. The explosions depends on how much damage they do. That's kind of like a whole thing. So like, I've always been a big fan of like multiple explosions and things like that. Like even back in Diablo 3, as much smack talk as I talk about Diablo 3, I really did enjoy the monk's exploding palm. I always thought exploding palm was a very fun skill, being able to like hit one target and then it explodes and then that chain reacts to another monster that then explodes and then it goes into like a big chain of explosions. Always love that kind of stuff. So I mean this one could be kind of fun. We also have the Focus Fire, which is the Sensual Construct channels a ray of fire, so it sounds kind of like Incinerate. So it basically gives your your construct an Incinerate beam. And then, of course, all of these can be modified. So I think it's important to remember as we're talking about these that they have all of this crap down here, which modifies these skills up here. So as we go forward and we take a look at some of this stuff, we will we'll be like, oh yeah, that could be really good for X, or that could be really good for Y, etc. Look at me using algebra. I'm using algebra. My teacher should be proud. Gyrate sounds a lot like Whirlwind. It says the sensual construct whirls its legs around quickly, dealing damage to all surrounding enemies. So it's kind of like a little whirlwind attack, I guess. Probably short term, not long term, like Whirlwind is. It's probably just like a and then it's done. Not like a. Although I guess we'll find out whether it's a. Hope you like my sound effects. My sound effects are that's important to the stream. Please rate me on the sound effects in the comments. The Impale is a straight line attack that damages all enemies in front of the essential construct. So that's like a pierce. Kind of sounds like pen shot, to be honest. It kind of does. Ooh, it sounds like a pen shot from like a Amazon or sorry, a Rogue. Whoa, 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 Baylor. 4.2 out of 5. I like it. I like it. Thank you. Thank you. Lightning bolt. Launch a bolt of lightning at the target, dealing damage. Arcs to other targets, dealing a portion of the original damage. Sounds like chain lightning. So it sounds like you can give your little guy chain lightning here. Protect. The Sensual construct materializes a protective barrier on the player for a portion of their maximum life. So this is going to consume, like if you use this, it's going to consume one of your offensive, but you can totally make them completely defensive. Like I could see people doing like an auto defense and like a barrier, like just do both of those together and just have like a freaking Sensual that just makes you like next to immortal. Because if you can do the damage yourself, I mean, what do you really care? And I think that also brings up an interesting point, is that the unfortunate side effect of this Sensual is that we're basically playing the base game. It's kind of a really silly thing, but we should definitely point this out. So, like in previous seasons, so in season 1, you would build your characters. So you build your character around the seasonal powers, which for season 1 was the why can I not remember all of a sudden? It was like the Varshan stuff, the Varshan like corruptions and whatnot. And in season 2, you build your character around the seasonal vampiric powers, right? Well, yeah, Malignant Hearts, that's what it was. Varshan Malignant Hearts, Malignant Hearts. So basically in season 3, well, there is no power. So there is no character power to build around. Which basically means, in a nutshell, you are a regular regular character. So we're just going to be regular characters for the most part. I mean, there's going to be some minor things that you can do with the Sensual to kind of like build around, but for the most part, it doesn't really feel like the characters are going to be much different than an Eternal Realm character this season. Because there's really not a whole lot special that you can do with your character with the Essentials. Now, there are some things, like for instance, you can focus on complete defense, and then you can have your character focus on complete offense. So that's one thing you could do, is you could set up like full defense pet, and then go full offense player, right? You could do something like that. Or, actually, I'm not really entirely sure. I mean, you could also potentially do something along the lines of like full offense pets with defensive player. I'm not really sure how well either of these would work. It really depends on how much damage output the pet is capable of. And I think that's what it's really going to come down to for this season. I think honestly, I hope that they nailed this pet properly, because it's basically going to be one of two things, and there's going to be no middle ground. Either the pet is amazing and sweeps, or the pet is garbage and the season is garbage. And I hate to say it this way, but this is basically the truth of the matter, and it's going to swing one way or the other. And if the pet isn't good, if the pet sucks, then the season's going to suck. Like it's going to be the season of the one new stash tab. That's what it's going to be the season of. The season of the one new stash tab. Anyway, let's keep going. So we got the protect barrier. We also got the reconstruct, which is this is the healing beam. So another way that you can potentially set him up defensively. So there's a lot of defensive mechanics that you can set up for your Sensual. So it definitely seems like you could completely you could completely make the most defensive Sensual possible. I mean, we've got the healing beam here, we've got the barrier, and then we also have the auto defense turret, which sounds pretty OP, to be honest. And you could combine any of these, two of these, any two of these. You can't have all of them, but I'm a little bit worried about this one, though. I think this one might be pretty crappy because it says maximum life over time. And my experience with maximum life over time abilities within Diablo 4 has been very poor. I actually do not really like them at all for the most part. I've played with them on like the skeleton necromancer and all sorts of other things, and like when they say healing over time, they really mean healing over time. Like it takes like they'll give you like 1,000 health or like 2,000 health or 5,000 health or whatever, but it'll take like 60 seconds for that 1,000 health to hit you. That's it. They're pretty stingy with the overtime. Like I don't know why they're so stingy with it, but they're really stingy with the overtime heals. When they say time, they mean like sit down and wait and grab a magazine and like start flipping through the magazine like you're in the doctor's office, kind of like over time. That's what they mean. Slash pummel enemies in front of the Sensual construct, dealing damage. So this is a frontal AoE attack. Tempest, electrically charge an enemy, causing it to deal damage to themselves and additional damage each second over time. If the enemy is killed, the Tempest spreads to another enemy, gaining additional time and bonus damage. These bonuses are also applied if Tempest is reapplied on the same enemy. So this is like I think the Druid has one of these. It's very similar. It's like you charge an enemy with electricity, and then that enemy damages other enemies, and then they get charged with electricity, and then they damage it. It's basically like a spreading electrical damage. So I guess we'll have to find out about that. This one sounds like it could be pretty powerful though, depending. I'm also rather curious here, like especially with like the elemental damages and things like that. Like, how can we add damage to the Sensual? Like, if we have bonuses to lightning damage, is it going to affect our Sensual? And if that's the case, well then, if we're a lightning sorceress, well then we would probably be pigeonholed into going with lightning abilities if we can boost up the damage of our Sensual with our lightning bonuses, right? So it's kind of like a catch-22 here. Like, if I was a lightning sorc, I would just go with lightning bolt and tempest, because I've got all these lightning bonuses anyway, right? So I'm just going to like feed into that. Or maybe the Sensual is completely separate from us and we have no way to buff it up other than how we build it, which is a whole other thing. Then we have Flash of Adrenaline, which is administers a quick flash of adrenaline into the player, granting bonus and damage for a duration. So this is just a damage buff, which actually does seem pretty powerful. I'm not sure though, because like Diablo 4 is really stingy with the duration of abilities. They'll be like 10 trillion% damage for 0.0001 of a second. And you're like, wait a minute. So I get a trillion% damage for a nanosecond? Like, how do I even use that? Like, when I use the buff, it's already gone before I swing my sword. Like, what is that? Like, shut up. You got a trillion% extra damage. Shut up, you fool. Why are you complaining about your trillion% extra damage? Well, because the buff only lasts for a nanosecond. Like, can I have like 1 second? Can you beef it up to 1 second? No, that would be too powerful. We can't give you 1 second. 1 second would be too much. You get 1 nanosecond. That's all you get. Deal with the nanosecond or don't. One shot the boss or don't. Like, we don't care what you do with your nanosecond of power, but you have 1 nanosecond, okay? 0.001, all right? Use it. So, I digress. But basically, this will completely come down to the duration. Like, how long are they giving us? Is it 1 second? Is it 5 seconds? Is it 10? Is it 20? Like, what are they giving us second-wise to actually take advantage of? Because if it's too short of a duration, then nobody's going to use it. It's just going to be garbage. And then we've got the tuning stones. So the tuning stones are all very dry. They're very dry. It's like, mechanical stuff. It's like this gives more, like range on your ability. So like this one right here, the voluminous, the voluminous support. Boop, 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 boop. So it affects the skill's size, so the radius or whatever, or the how big it is. So like, there's a bunch of stuff up here that this could apply to. Like maybe with the gyrate, maybe you want a voluminous gyrate. Maybe you want a gyrate that's very voluminous. Okay, that's got a very voluminousness to it, so it gets a bigger area of effect and it hits more targets. Maybe it makes the line attack go further in a straight line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You also have this one that does attack speed bonus. Now, the attack speed bonus probably doesn't apply to everything. So I was thinking about this. It's kind of one of those things that probably only applies to some stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure that this attack speed bonus is not going to apply to, for instance, to the channeling effects. It's not going to apply to that. Speaking of which, you guys just reminded me. Somebody said chinchillas, and I don't have my chinchilla. Cody's not up here. Cody's down there with his mama, so I'm going to go grab one of the chaunchies. I'm going to see if I can get the big fat one. That's right, big fat chaunchies. He was sleeping when I pulled him out though. He's probably gonna want to go right back to sleep. I bet you if I open up my shirt, he'll crawl right in and go to sleep. He jumped in there. Well, he'll come back out later. The really funny thing is you guys saw him go in there, right? So you guys saw him go in there. But people that come into the stream later that don't know he's in there, he'll come out while, like, in the middle of the stream later, and they'll be like, "What the hell is crawling out of your shirt?" All right, so let's move on to the next one. We've got breaking support, which is damage from supported skill instantly destroys enemy barrier. So that's a kind of an interesting one, just like a thing that you can add in that like rips barriers down. It actually seems kind of nice because a lot of the monsters that have barriers, like especially the butcher, with being able to rip their barriers down would actually be really nice, and it also makes them vulnerable. So you could attach that to anything. Just free barrier breaking and free vulnerability. Although look at these numbers. They always do this, Jank. Look, they can't ever give you a duration that's actually worthwhile. They're like, you're like, "Can I have $1 million, Blizzard?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, you can have $1 million, but you got 2 seconds to spend it. All right, here's your $1 million. 1, 2. All right, give it back." They're always so stingy with the durations on stuff. Like, they can't ever give you like 3 or 4 seconds or 5 or 6 seconds. It's always got to be like 1 second or 2 seconds. Tactical support. Decrease the cooldown of the supported skill. Okay, so this one would make it so that you could spam the abilities. That's pretty crazy. Like, for instance, in this particular case with the barrier, or the heal, if it actually turns out to be good, you could decrease the time between casts, so you could have the barrier up more often. So that could definitely be interesting. How often do I give them Death Smash? At least once a month, usually, if not a little bit more than that. But I tend not to do it as often. I don't know. It's they'll take a Death Smash every single day if you let them, but it's not healthy for them, especially the females. It can cause problems. What are you digging in there for? Don't be digging in there. I'm a live person. Don't dig on me. digger. He's the reason I got holes in my shirts. He'd be digging, and then he bites. It's like yanking, and I'm like, dang, it puts holes in my shirts. Little turd. Let's see here. So we've also got efficiency support, which increases critical strike chance to the same targets. Critical strike chance in Diablo 4 is so overdone. It is so overdone. You can literally have like easy, like without even trying, easy like 50% crit chance. Easy. And I'm not even talking like actually trying to beef up your crit chance to a high level. Like you can just easily have like 50% crit chance. And if you actually try, you could easily get 100% crit chance. I'm not exactly sure if they understand that what they've done is created a monster with crit strike chance where literally everybody can have like 100% crit strike chance pretty much, or very nearly 100% crit strike chance. And so stuff like this doesn't look as attractive as it normally would because everybody's already sitting at like insane, ridiculous critical strike chance values. I mean, my Necromancer alone, literally, I think one time when I was setting him up, he was at like 115% critical strike chance. Do I really need more critical strike chance? I don't think so. I'm 15% over the cap at that point, and like I don't even know why I would ever even stack more critical strike chance. In fact, I need to take it down a notch. So like things like this sometimes don't really look as attractive as I think that they intend them to, because very simply put, most characters don't actually have trouble with critical strike chance. Devastation support, supported skills gain critical strike damage. Now this is a little bit more interesting, but ever since they changed it so that critical strike damage has a cap on it now, so it's only additive bonus instead of multiplicative, a little less attractive than it used to be. Although, of course, you know, if you're stacking critical strike damage and you want the additive bonus anyway, I mean, it could be interesting there. But it says supported skill gains critical strike damage bonus. So this isn't even for you as a player. It's only for the robot. So it's not even for you. It's just for the robot. So the robot gets critical strike damage. Which is a little less attractive because this one gives you critical strike chance. This one only gives the robot the critical strike damage. Safeguard support, when used, the supported skill grants damage reduction to you. Now, this one seems interesting, but at the same time, I was also thinking that this one could also be kind of detrimental. So one of the things about damage reduction is that you really kind of need damage reduction to be always active, or at least as close to always active as you can possibly get it. And let me not let time get away from me. What are we, 7 minutes away? So we got 7 minutes till the live stream. Let's put this like this so I can see the timer. That way, just in case it starts while I'm yakking my lips off, you know, we will see it start. The thing about this is that it's only going to be active when he uses the ability, and that means it's going to be very, how do I put it, unreliable damage reduction. Unreliable damage reduction in Diablo 4 gets you killed. It's very bad. It's one of those things that you really just, like, if you can't rely on it to be there when you need it, a lot of the times it will just end up making you falsely confident. And then when it wears off and then you can't get it back because, of course, it's unreliable, now you don't have that damage reduction when you need it most. And so sometimes something like this can actually be a detriment more than a positive. Of course, there is also the, where is it? This one right here, which is the tactical support. So I suppose if you were going to use this one, you would probably want to use this one in tandem, which is the tactical support to increase this cooldown, because that way you could potentially get the cooldown reduction and make sure that that damage reduction is up more often and it's more reliable, right? So in that case, you might actually want to tie together safeguard support and tactical support together. And then you got like field support. A portion of the supported skills damage dealt is applied as cold. This kind of stuff can come in handy if your build requires monsters to be chilled or, chilled, things like that, like crowd control effects. So this would allow you to add a crowd control effect into your character without actually having the crowd control effect yourself, which is something that you could build around. So you could rely on this to get your chilling effect and then deal the damage that way. Burning support, same thing. It's going to apply burning damage. This could potentially work very well with the fire sorceress, because the fire sorceress, of course, has like things that give huge amounts of damage depending on like the number of burning targets and like health on the number of burning targets and so forth and so on. So this probably could help the sorceress in that regard and other characters that might be built off of burning damage. And of course, you also get the bonus critical strike damage, but it's only to the essential construct again. So the essential construct is the only thing that gets that additional damage. And then again, we got electrocution, which has a chance to stun enemies. So again, the same thing here. This could be something that you could add in if you are building around stuns. Like maybe you're using the aspect of retribution, which gives you the multiplier for monsters that are stunned, things like that. And then the same thing with the bleeding. Like the bleeding one, again, like goes into there's a couple different characters like the barbarian that makes everything bleed and like consumes bleeds and things like that. So maybe it would be interesting to use that with a bleed barbarian and then try and stack your own bleeds on top of those bleeds and then pull them off with rupture and things like that. I mean, a lot of these seem to be built around the idea that you're actually setting up the essential as almost like a character. And then same thing with poison, which could be handy if you need poison damage. Like the rogue has a lot of abilities that require the monster to be poisoned. And then when you hit them with, say, like shadow imbuement, you get like this effect if they're poisoned and so forth and so on. So it could be a very easy way to add in additional poisoning to the monsters. So that way you don't have to do that yourself. And then we also have shadow damage too. So they basically have all the elements here. They've got the shadow damage over time. They've got the poison, the bleeding. They've got the stuns. They've got the burning and the chilling. So depending on how you want to set your guy up to do whatever, you could have like tons of crowd control effects going off at any given time. Stuns, bleeds, chills, poisons, shadow damage over time, etc. And then we also have the fortification here. So like it gives you fortification. So if you're having trouble building fortification, that's another way you can add a little bit more fortification into your character. This one seems kind of interesting. It basically just gives you resource. So it grants the player resources. So if you're having trouble generating resources for whatever reason, it looks like you can use the Senshal to, like generate resource for you, which sounds good. I would assume that a lot of people are probably going to end up using this one because one of the things that people don't like to do is spam basic skills unless they're a basic skill build. And so this would allow you to spam your core skill or whatever it is more often because you would have more resources in general, which is certainly not terrible. And it says resource, it says when the supporting skill first deals damage, player gains an amount of primary resource when the supporting skill first deal damage. So you basically just get like a bump of resource. Initiative support, the supported skill will cause the Essential Construct to teleport to the target if out of range, can only occur once every so often. So basically a tele stomp. And then we get the arcing support. The supported skill can hit additional enemies. I mean, this one sounds like it goes very well with, say, like the electrocution. Where is it? The Tempest, the Lightning Bolt. Might go well with something like the Focus Fire. I'm not really sure. You'd have to play around with it. It sounds like we'll be playing around with this little guy, trying to figure out exactly what to make the best out of him. I mean, there's also multi-shot, so you can have like multiple projectiles. I'm assuming that one probably only works with a skill that has projectiles, so it's going to be useless on anything that doesn't have projectiles. Piercing also is going to be nice for the projectile things. So like if you were using one of the projectile based things, you probably would want to go piercing and multi-shot. That way the ability could pierce through and hit multiple targets, and then it would spread out and it would pierce at the same time. So you'd basically have like an Amazon piercing multi-shot there. And anything that's a projectile skill can probably use these two in tandem, which certainly sounds good. It says that we're ready, but nothing's happening. Let's reload this just in case. Okay, well, it's still not up, so we're just waiting on them. We've also got gripping support, which is damage done and effects done by support skill to distant enemies, pulls them toward the Chinchilla construct. So this is a pull in. So for characters that don't have a pull in, this is a way that you could have an additional pull in, which is certainly not terrible. Pull ins are great for, just like sucking all the monsters together and then just smacking them with a big old hammer like a Hoda Barbarian or whatever. You gotta get them all in one place and you can hit them all at the same time. Some characters have their own pull-ins, like the Necromancer and his corpse tendrils, which is absolutely amazing. And then other characters might not have their own pull-in, so this could be a way that you could add a pull-in to those characters, or even just add an additional pull-in, just so that you have another pull-in other than the regular one. And we also have registered damage support. Any damage caused from the supported skill is registered. The registered damage explodes at effectiveness. So this is one of those things where it builds up. It sounds an awful lot like the Barber Gem from Season 1. Do you guys remember the Barber Gem? It basically, what it does is it's going to actually add up all of the damage. And then at the end of whatever it is, it explodes, right? So the whole registered damage thing, I'm not exactly sure how overpowered this is. I mean, it does say specifically from the supported skill, so I guess it might not be as broken as the Barber Gem, which pulled freaking all damage from literally everything and then exploded it. So it's probably a lesser version of the Barber Gem there. But I would assume to keep an eye on that because the Barber Gem was overpowered as all get out. Seeking support, this is basically like a guided arrow. It basically makes the projectile automatically seek enemies, which sounds pretty interesting, especially if you're going to go with, like if you went with like multi-shot piercing and then you went with the seeking support, that could be pretty fun. Like set up the Chinchilla to have multi-shot piercing with the seeking so that you have like a huge array come out and then all of them start to seek a target and you have like freaking 10 bolts like all converge on one little guy and it's like I don't know. I bet you it sounds cooler in my head than it probably will be in the game, but a lot of things sound cooler in my head than they are in the game, so that's just how it works. The slowing support. Damage from supported skills slows every enemy movement. So this is a way you could add a slow to your character. The closer the enemy is to the central construct, the greater the slow amount. Enemies may be slowed up to the maximum amount. So it doesn't say what the maximum amount is. But basically this is just a way you could add a slow into your build. And there are a lot of ways that you can use that to your advantage. Gaining damage from slowed enemies is the main one. The Druid, I think, is the one that mainly takes advantage of slowed enemy damage. And of course, crowd control damage as well would come into play there as well. Mockery support, damage done by the supporting skill taunts the enemy hit for a limited duration. Now, as far as I'm aware, they said that the Chinchilla is immortal and does not die. So a taunt on an immortal pet would definitely be great. And yeah. Is this thing still not up? Like, reload. Let's reload this again. Did they accidentally make the wrong live stream? They did. That's what they did. They did. No, that's the old one. Yeah, okay. Well, no, they're still not live. Let's check their Twitch channel just in case. See if they're live on Twitch and just not live on YouTube. Just to be sure, because they're kind of like past their time here. They are live on Twitch, I think.
For that, another good opportunity for our players to actually provide feedback because this was our first like holiday event, and so we're actually going to have future holiday events. You guys will hear about one pretty soon in the future, and based off of a lot of great feedback we got, you'll be seeing that feedback applied to some of these future events that we have coming forward. And of course, at the end of the year, we ended up going over kind of all the big stats since Diablo 4 launched, and a ton of people have joined Diablo 4 to slay demons with us in Sanctuary, and a lot of people have died as well. And some of these stats, these numbers have only grown since we posted these late last year. And of course, we had 37 million people died at the Butcher. Now more, for sure, since we ended up having that. We've had over 1 trillion monsters killed, which is absolutely crazy. And lots of hardcore deaths for people who choose to play a little bit more risky and play hardcore specifically. And our 2 most popular classes being the Sorcerer and the Necromancer. Not too surprised on the Necromancer. Necromancer is a fan favorite, has always been a fan favorite with D2 and D3. I actually, funny enough, I might actually be playing Necromancer here for Season 3. I don't know what you guys were planning on playing for Season 3, but...
The team makes fun of me. I play Swork every single season. That's my favorite.
I played Swork last season too, so I don't blame you.
Well, I've been meaning to play Druid, so I might do that. Buck the trend there.
There we go. I did Druid in Season 1. I did Swork in Season 2. Feeling Necromancer in Season 3, so I think that's going to be my choice there. But, so it was great to see all the numbers and all the stats from Diablo 4 since launch. But today, we are here to talk about Season 3, Season of the Construct. It's arriving January 23rd. Dan, do you want to give us a quick little rundown?
Sure, yeah. So Season of the Construct is packed with a lot of content. And so there's a lot of things we're going to cover coming up. I mean, the first thing we're going to talk about is our all-new quest line that delves beneath the sands of Kyrgyzstan. Nothing good happens beneath the sands of Kyrgyzstan, so that's where we're headed. And in addition to that, as you've seen from a lot of the promotional materials, we are now introducing a seasonal companion called the Seneschal Construct. And that is something that you can upgrade and really kind of round out your builds in new ways. In addition to that, we have a couple of new repeatable activities. The first is the Vaults, which is an all-new dungeon type. And the second is Arcane Tremors, which is a new overworld activity. And last but surely not least, in terms of the Season 3 package, is the Gauntlet and leaderboards. And those are coming pretty soon, but we'll give you a bit of a tease right now, I think.
Yeah, so I know a ton of stuff for Season 3. Yeah. This is most definitely the biggest season yet for Diablo 4, with a lot of content. And as you mentioned, questline and story being the first thing that we wanted to dive into. Yeah. Madeline, I think this is a good opportunity to talk to us a little bit about what we can expect for the questline for Season 3.
So as Dan mentioned, we have a new questline for Season 3. In it, you are going to assist the mage Ayujan to purge the demon Malphus from these vaults of Zoltan Kulle. Malphus has taken over the vaults, turned them into his own little kingdom, and has turned the hazards and the constructs inside of them against their makers. I think a good question to start with is kind of why constructs. It's a little bit of a departure from seasons past. Season 1 dealt with malignancy, and Season 2 dealt with vampires, both stemming from Lilith's influence. But Sanctuary is such a big place, and so many different stories and lore, where at present day Sanctuary is kind of the Dark Ages. We've had, thousands of years of different technology and magic, and this is one of those stories. We spent a lot of time discussing as a team what we even wanted to do for Season 3, and the story team really fell in love with mage clans. We delved into a lot of Diablo lore. We delved into the Sinwar books. We delved into the Roderick Vault, etc. And the mage clans, for people that don't know, were these ancient mage societies that really were expertise in certain levels of magic. And we love the Visurai. They're typically the bad guys, typically delve into demonic magic, even though levels of, traditionally evil per se. And Visurai created constructs. They took machinery and their demonic magic and made these soldiers or these guards. Our protagonist, Ayujan, is not technically Visurai. He's part of the Ennead clan with Zoltan Kulle, but their goal was to take these idea of constructs and make them their own and, do them in a different way.
Yeah, and Zoltan Cole is kind of a familiar face
He
for everyone
is.
in Diablo.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Definitely pun intended.
Pun intended, yes.
Zoltan played a part in the Diablo 3 story, and of
Yes.
course we saw him in Diablo Immortal as well.
Yes, Zoltan was one of the original Haradrim. Good old Uncle Tyrael gave him the original Soul Stones. It's like, hey, I trust you, take care of them. Zoltan went a little bit off script, and he's like, what if I made these better? And so he created his Dark Soul Stone, which was his own kind of flawed attempt at ending the Eternal Conflict. It didn't go quite as he expected, and the rest of Haradrim said, we don't really like what you're doing. You got to get out. So they killed him. We're too frightened of you. But Zoltan and Ayujan knew each other in their youth and became business partners and eventually friends. And they shared this vision of, if we can create our own version of constructs and create this alternate power source that's not using demonic magic, the Loom, these constructs can fight heaven and hell, and humanity can flourish. Unfortunately, it didn't go as expected. They couldn't get it right. And Zoltan was just like, you know what? I'm going to move on to bigger and greater things. This is a failure. Let's move on. And Ayujan was like, no, we have something here. Let's keep going. And unfortunately, that created a rift in their friendship. And that rift allowed for the demon Malphus to infiltrate their work. Malphus is a demon that you're going to encounter in the quest line and then fight an uber version of him later in the season. He's a little bit different than our typical demon. You think of, big scary guy with horns. Like I said before, we took inspiration from Sin War, and they have a lot of different types of demons. They have different abilities, different shapes. One of them is like this stone liquid mass with a mouth on top. And so the original Malphus was like this red mist, and that allowed him to kind of sneak into corners that he wasn't supposed to. Malphus is a named demon, and he's one of terror, but he's very unimportant in the hierarchy of hell, and that kind of bothers him. We joked around on the team that he had a desk job in hell. So when he found the opportunity to sneak into Sanctuary and to corrupt the vaults, he's like, this is my time to shine. This is my kingdom. I'm going to rule it. And he did that successfully for many, many years. And he might have gotten away with it forever, except he was a little bit too prideful. He's like, I'd like to sneak out and leave the vaults.
Yeah, he's not satisfied with the vaults. He now wants to start trying to take over Sanctuary itself.
And that's where the player comes in.
Yeah.
So I think we have footage of the quest line, the early parts. You are going to start in Gaia Cool, where Malphus's influence has seeped in. Villagers and demons don't typically go well. I can't even imagine their insurance rates. But they hire you and they're like, hey, something's going on, something up north, please figure it out for us. And so you find the first vault and you delve into it to try and get a sense of what's going on. And these are where you're going to start seeing the first hostile constructs that Malphus has corrupted, and find your own construct. You start finding pieces of it. You're going to keep traveling through, and eventually you're going to find Ayujan, who is in a less perfect than ideal situation under Malphus's influence. You eventually free him. He's like, thank you so much. I don't even know what's going on, but let's figure this out together. And he fixes the Seneschal construct for you. He's like, you're probably going to need this as we delve into and force Malphus out.
Yeah, and here we're seeing like part of the quest line, like obviously building up and kind of creating your own Seneschal construct. Yeah.
Now, I think we have footage of the Malphus fight as well.
Oh yeah, we can jump into that.
So Malphus is our first stationary boss. He uses the environment, the hazards in the room, as well as his glaive to smack you around. There are different elements in the boss fight that are going to periodically switch. Like I said before, he's this red mist, but for this fight, he is possessed the largest construct he could find, the Guardian, to fight you, and the Loom is in the background.
Yeah. So imagine then Malphus has pretty much become like the embodiment. It's the vault itself, and the vault is now coming alive to try and kill you.
When you delve into the vaults, it's definitely going through his literal body.
Yep.
He definitely wants you out. He doesn't want you in there. He's going to he'll throw everything in the kitchen sink at you.
Yep.
We also have footage of our new seasonal town, the Gate Hall. This is kind of the gateway between the vaults and the upper world. You're going to go through it in the quest line, and then it is going to turn into a town for you to use. Has a waypoint, so easy travel. Most of the vendors that you know and love, you can see here that they're actually construct vendors that Ayujan has fixed for you to help you out. And here you're going to be accessing the vaults. You can also access them in the overworld if you choose so. So it should be a really convenient place for you to visit and turn into your main hub for the season.
Yeah, we expect a lot of players will be hanging out here in the gate hall, since all your vendors will be here. It'll be easy access to the vaults and everything. So kind of the new hub specifically for Season 3. So. Yeah, sounds really cool. Yeah, really excited for the quest line and story for Season 3. Obviously, we talked about Seneschal constructs and how that's actually going to be a big part of the storyline. People have been talking about it all this week with, seeing the footage of like, wow, it looks like we have these little companions with us now for Season 3. So, Dan, can you talk us a little bit about, what Seneschal constructs will be for players?
So the Seneschal construct is a seasonal companion. And the seasonal companion is kind of the embodiment of your power chase for the season. So every season we try to develop a new type of power chase, and power is really important to our players. Obviously, this is a game about becoming super powerful and killing lots of demons, and we're always trying to find new ways to do that. So we really wanted to stretch ourselves this season and find a way that players hadn't seen before. And so that is how the Seneschal came into being. Now, the Seneschal is this little construct, well, maybe not so little, but it follows you around, and it has different skills and abilities.
And I will note, you can pet your construct, your Seneschal construct, which is you have to be able to pet it. So yes,
absolutely
important.
Yeah, and so you can have 2 skills on your Seneschal construct. Those are given to the construct using what is called a governing stone. And governing stones are these semi-precious stones that you can find throughout your adventures in Season 3. They drop in a lot of those repeatable activities I mentioned, which we'll cover soon. And there's lots of different types. I think there's about 12 that you can slot in. We weren't satisfied with that, though. Because, 12 skills, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but we wanted to allow players really to modify those skills however they saw fit. And so we've also developed 27 different tuning stones, another type of stone, that you can slot in then to modify that skill. And so you've got those 2 governing stones, and then each governing stone has 3 different tuning stones that can modify it and just create really wild combinations of powers that'll allow players to experiment how they see fit.
It's like I thought.
And so kind of with that breadth of powers, then you've got a lot of different options for being able to kind of round out your build and create new types of ways to kill demons.
Awesome. So, that's very cool. It sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And I think we might actually have
some
examples and footage of what some of these would be.
So let me tell you what's going on here. So we've brought up our construct menu, and this is in the inventory UI, but it's its own separate UI, so your construct is not going to take up your traditional inventory space. And this construct has 2 governing stones equipped right now. One is called Focus Fire, which was that beam of fire that was coming out. The other one is called Lightning Bolt, and you can see it shooting some lightning bolts. Like I said, 2 skills, not too bad. You're killing some folks here, but we wanna amp things up a bit. So in addition to being able just to get stones as drops from activities, you can also craft stones. And so we've gone to our gate hall here, and we're crafting a new stone. We're going to see what we get. In this case, it's a pummel stone, a governing stone. I already have that skill, so it's just going to count towards XP, towards leveling up pummel. And I'm going to kit out my Seneschal a little bit different. So we've got Focus Fire, And I think the first thing we're going to add is voluminous support. Fancy way of saying that it's going to increase the area of effect for your attacks. We're also going to add electrocution. Now, even though focus fire is a fire attack, electrocution is going to add some lightning damage to it, and it's also going to add a little bit of chance of stun. And so now we're dipping our toes into this crowd control. And then finally, we're going to add arcing support. And arcing support's really cool because arcing support allows your abilities to chain. And so now let's see what that power is going to look like when we bring it back up. All right, so here now you can see that focus fire is chaining amongst enemies. You can see that some of them are getting stunned, little electricity around them, and it had a bigger area of effect. Similarly, if we were to apply some of these to the lightning bolt attack, let's say we gave it multi-shot in that arcing support, now it can just blast through enemies. So it's got a lot of options there.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing some examples of what players can potentially do with their seneschal constructs and actually make adjustments and modify them to kind of suit your specific playstyle. I think a big question is like, can you actually add, maybe some status effects or things like that? Like, can you potentially add in a tuning stone that may make enemies like vulnerable, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. So again, we wanted to give all of you a lot of different options to play with. We want this to be a toy that you can experiment with. And so that means that, some of the examples we showed were more damage dealing, where the seneschal is doing the damage. But then we also want to give players the ability to just kind of set up, enemies for you to go in and, land the killing blow. So there are a lot of different support stones that can make things vulnerable, bleed things, electrocute them, chill them. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, pretty much any of the, the verbs in the game.
So your possibilities are massive with what you can do with your seneschal. And one thing, this is actually something that Sean White, who was in the video, our Dev Insights video before the actual start of the stream, pointed out yesterday on social media to players that were asking a little bit more, or for more clarity on some items. But the seneschal construct actually does scale 1-to-1 with like specific like secondary type of stats, or even things that are associated with your actual character. So things like attack rating or crit chance, for instance.
Yeah, it was very important for the seneschal to feel as if it was an extension of you, if you wanted to be that. Also, we really didn't want to get, a seneschal that was just outclassed when you got to level 100, because then where's the fun, right? So, yes, absolutely, the seneschal will become more powerful as you become more powerful.
Awesome. Yeah, so seneschal constructs obviously playing a huge role, and with the construct and you now being able to customize and change things up for how you want to play, there's new challenges and that are associated with the season 3 season of the construct, and one of them is vaults, which I know we do want to dive a little bit more into specifically. Do you guys want to talk a little bit more about vaults?
Sure. Vaults are a new dungeon for the season, and we have 4 types of vaults. Like I said before, they are this extension of Malphas. And because of that, he has turned the hazards inside of them into enemies in and of themselves. We wanted to explore the fantasy of a environment that was hostile, and it was ready to kill you often. And so they're filled with hazards that, spinning fires of death, floor plates that come alive, arrows that shoot out of the walls, and with our construct enemies. I think we have some footage of the vaults as well to kind of walk you through it. Constructs in them per usual. These, because they're so hostile and dangerous, we wanted them to have a good, be lucrative and be risk reward. So we have a lot of different loot. I think a little bit later in the video, there's like an explosion of gold, and that's just going to be common. And our dungeon designers, typically with the dungeon experience, you get a pop-up and you're like, okay, it's telling me to kill all the enemies, I know what to do. The dungeon designers wanted to explore a little bit of I'm not sure what I'm going to be experiencing, I have to go find my objective. And so the objectives are vague a little bit on purpose, but typically vaults end in this, what we call informally as a death room, a danger room, where everything is being thrown at you, all the traps from the vault accumulated in one large room. So yeah, we're really excited to. It's a bit of new gameplay, you know, dodging traps, and this is one of the danger rooms, for example. Yeah, we're really excited to get people to dive into this and experiment.
You know, and obviously with vaults, like tons of traps here.
Yes.
I know that there's some gameplay associated with like kind of avoiding them and rewards associated with those as well.
Yes, absolutely. So certainly Madeline has outlined a lot of the risks associated with vaults. I mean, those hazards are going to be pretty unforgiving. But if we're putting a lot of risks in front of you guys, we want to make sure there's a lot of rewards too. So you saw a little bit of it already with like some of the basic chests in the vaults have been souped up, so they're more rewarding than those chests you'd find in other dungeons. But there's another mechanic at play too, and that's called Zoltan's Warding. So as you enter a vault, after you've cleared some of Malphas's influence out of the vault, you can find this statue of Zoltan Kulle, because of course Zoltan Kulle,
He has to have a statue.
he's got to have a
himself.
statue in every vault. I mean, that's just how he rolls, right? So if you're able to find a special, it's called a Pearl of Warding, you can offer that to the statue, and in return, the statue is going to grant you Zoltan's Warding. This is a buff. It doesn't really help your combat too much, but what it does is it gives you additional rewards, and you can see right there, there's kind of that glowing one to the side with the icon. That is a ward-woven chest that contains extra rewards if you're able to keep that buff. And so as you get better and better at the vaults, you're going to start basically challenging yourself to keep the buff. And you keep the buff by avoiding the hazards. And so the gameplay really becomes focused on trying to make sure that you're moving as cleanly as possible through the vaults, in addition to fighting the enemies in order to get the highest payout.
And I if you make like mistakes, like I know I will make mistakes.
Yes,
like
I will too.
I am a person that gets hit by like every single trap under the sun. Are there ways of being able to like help mitigate like some of those types of mistakes?
You can have multiple stacks of buffs. So one pearl is, I believe, 3 stacks.
Yeah.
And so if you want to go grind the overworld activity to get the pearls, you're like, okay, I have a bunch of stacks, I have a really good chance. And if you don't make it and no stacks left, there were 2 chests at the end, you still always get a loot. But the super great loot comes from Zoltan's Warding.
Yep.
Got it. So so there are opportunities for players to actually get multiple chests.
Yes.
And you can actually have multiple stacks of warding to essentially create a buffer if you know
Yes.
you're planning on playing a little bit more sloppy.
If
or
you
something
really
like that.
really want to brute force your way through, you can, but you've got to invest a little more time.
Got it. No, that makes sense. That's great to know. And like I guess with the Pearls and Overworld activity, I know that has like to earn those types of buffs. Like how do players actually end up doing
Right.
that?
So that's our second repeatable activity that I'd mentioned, which is the Arcane Tremors. And so Arcane Tremors is a new type of overworld activity that's really localized around the entrances of the vault. So remember how we were talking about Malphas, and Malphas's sights have become grander now that he controls all the vaults. And so all the constructs are starting to spill out into Sanctuary and cause trouble. Additionally, some new types of hazards have unearthed and are starting to appear around the vaults. And so it's your job to every so often go in and beat back all these construct invasions or incursions, essentially, that are creating the tremors. And so I can talk a little bit about this activity. We can queue up some video for that too. And so here you've arrived and you see basically a roaming band of constructs. And obviously it's your job to go in and kill them and send them back to where they came from. But that's not all you need to do within this activity. What you're looking to do to really advance the activity is look for these cores that you can use to draw out Malphas's most powerful lieutenants. And so you're getting a core here from an obelisk, which is an overworld hazard, and you've got to make sure to not get hit by that. And if you collect enough cores, you're able to deposit them in a brazier, which you can see on screen here glowing. And the brazier is a signal that you are now challenging one of the Heralds of Malphas. And the Herald of Malphas you see appearing right there. You and hopefully a bunch of other of your friends will, gang up and defeat the Herald of Malphas. Get some cool rewards in addition to those pearls that we were talking about before, which you can then use to supercharge your rewards elsewhere.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know, like, this being an overworld activity, one thing that, and this is based off of feedback that we've gotten from the community as well, even with Season of Blood, there was Blood Harvest, which were overworld activities, and now there's kind of activities everywhere. And they all have different various rewards for the player, whether that's vaults, whether that's doing some of the activities on the overworld for this season. You have opportunities of actually being able to get rewards kind of all over the place.
Yeah, our intention is for season 1 you kind of stayed in tunnels, and
Yep.
then season 2 you kind of stayed in the overworld most of the time. We didn't want to make the players feel like they're stuck and they can only stay in one place and this is it. So the intention is you do some dungeons, you do some overworld activities, maybe do some bounties along the way. You should feel like you're mobile and not, hey, I have to stay here for the season.
Yep.
Yeah, and just another thing that I know we briefly touched on, which was vaults and how there are nightmare variations of that.
Yes.
And that's something that is additional to just going through vaults as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, the vaults are fully dungeons in that respect. And so we have the ability and have made nightmare versions of all of these dungeons. And the nightmare versions of the dungeons obviously have more difficult combat, but they also have a lot more rewards. So those chests we had talked about before, the ward-woven chests, you actually get more of those as you advance in the nightmare system. So then your vault runs become even more and more rewarding in that case.
Yeah, and like, how would you access something like that specifically?
Right. So we're going to use the Nightmare Dungeon Sigil system, but we've created a way that the game can now award unique seasonal sigils, and in this case, they're called vault sigils. And so we did that because, for those folks who really want to focus in on vault play, you can earn the vault sigils, and now you can target farm the vaults instead of leaving it up to random chance.
Very cool.
Awesome. One last dungeon, the
yes.
Mega Uber dungeon. It's kind of it's very large. It's the best features of all the other vaults put into one, and that is where Malphas lives. And so you will be questline, you'll defeat him, and then Uber version of him post questline for the rest of the season.
And so there is an Uber version of Malphas that is even more challenging than the Quest version. And he kind of sits parallel to the current boss ladder. So you don't need to do him for the boss ladder, but it's certainly going to be a bonus for you if you do.
Awesome. So yeah, way more additional content in this season, and we have a lot of different ways of being able to play and take your character. You can do it activities on the overworld. You can actually use those activities to help you out in the vaults. You can do nightmare variations of the vaults. We have Uber vaults now, or with a larger, more difficult vault with a new boss here for season 3 as well. And this is just a little bit of what we have for season 3 with, of course, we have Seneschal Constructs, which will be around with you all the time. And with that, we, of course, have one additional component to season 3.
That's right.
And that's with the Gauntlet and Leaderboard. And I will caveat, like, I know we mentioned this in the blog earlier this week. So the Gauntlet and Leaderboard are actually not going to launch at the start of this season. And that's really because, we want players to actually go through the season and actually grow and learn the season with their character before we actually launch the leaderboards. So we will have information on when we actually do launch Gauntlet and Leaderboards really soon. But Dan, I know, wants to kind of dive deeper into what leaderboards are and what the Gauntlet is for players so they have a better idea.
Yeah, so a lot of you saw a taste at BlizzCon of what the Gauntlet and the Trials leaderboards are going to be. And so we can go in a bit more depth here and hopefully start to answer some of your questions. So the Gauntlet is another new dungeon type. The Gauntlet is something that unlocks with the overall leaderboard feature in World Tier 4. And basically that means that it's targeting more of your in-game players at this point. Folks who have really decided on a build, they're starting to really round it out, it's become more powerful, and now they want to prove their might. not just to themselves, but obviously to show off and have bragging rights. So the gauntlet itself, new type of dungeon, is kind of based around 3 different principles. The first is that it is fixed seed. The second is that it is non-linear. And thirdly, like I said, it's there to prove your might. And so I'm going to kind of unpack that a little bit. Fixed seed means really that it is trying to be as fair as possible for everyone. Everyone gets the same gauntlet every week. And so you're not fishing for, the best roll of a rift or something like that. Yeah. It's really a level playing field at this point. And let me tell you, that was kind of hard to do. Our game is not very good at doing one thing. It loves to do random things. But in this case, we felt competition demanded that it be fair.
Yeah.
Non-linear is really all about how the dungeon is laid out. It is not a dungeon where you travel from the beginning to the end. It's not about trying to get to the end as quickly as possible. It's about the choices you make while you're within that dungeon. And so the layout basically allows you to develop all manner of strategies. I mean, when we had people testing the dungeons, the gauntlets, there would be arguments over, or not even arguments, sometimes people would just kind of say, what was the best path you took? Oh, I think I can do better than that. And so a lot of it is trying to figure out your way through the dungeon each week. And then finally, proving your might is about killing enemies, and gathering what we're calling proofs of might, and then trying to get the highest score possible. So it's not about just going fast. Certainly going fast helps. But it's really about how effective and efficient are you at combat. And that's going to be reflected in your score. And so at the end of a gauntlet, you're going to get a score. And you're going to say, okay, can I do better than that? And we're going to say, well, we've got a couple targets you can try and hit, but really you're going to be shooting for those leaderboards.
Yeah.
But let's circle back on strategies a little bit. Yeah. And I think we've got a little bit of video to help with that. So here's the gauntlet right here. It, for all intents and purposes, looks like a normal dungeon. But we said, again, it's World Tier 4. It's targeting level 100 players. So we're going to throw a dungeon boss at you right at the start.
Yeah, and I will note, I know we're mentioning level 100. Technically, you can do Gauntlet before level 100. It's just probably more efficient to do it at level 100 just because it is an endgame activity and it will be challenging. I
mean, if you think you're ready to tackle the Gauntlet below level 100, by all means. It's not tuned that way. And so here, you're fighting, the Tomb Lord, and he's pretty powerful, but you're more powerful. In that case, you defeated him. Now, the cool thing about defeating that boss is it doesn't drop loot, it drops a shrine. And that shrine can then be used as a power-up to, further increase your power within the Gauntlet. And there's other types of new shrines within the Gauntlet, too. We just hit previously here a Pillar of Proving. And that's a shrine that actually respawns all the enemies around you. Now, why would you want to do that? Because you want to kill them again and get their score, right? So we've got the Pillar of Proving, we've got the Pillar of Glory, which is a way to basically get a multiplier on your score. And we've even got chests scattered all throughout the dungeon that you can earn keys for. And you see keys up in the corner on the HUD there. And those keys give you even additional score. So a lot of the strategy of a Gauntlet is, as a solo player at least, trying to find the most optimal path through it and use that as a way to, take your really cool build and get the highest score possible.
And something we saw in the footage, obviously the first thing we ran into was a boss, a Tomb Lord right there. And so you could technically take that Tomb Lord further into the dungeon if you want to.
Yeah. You're not stuck in the room.
You're not stuck in the room.
You can draw that Tomb Lord right next to another shrine and do a combo and then start building up even higher score.
Exactly, and so that's the thing I think with Gauntlets, we're going to start to see some really, and because they change weekly and these leaderboards will be weekly, we're going to see players kind of create different combinations of what's the best way of optimizing for the best score possible? Taking advantage of the shrines, taking advantage of the chests, taking advantage of should I drag a bunch of enemies over here just because I know I'll have a shrine ready and stuff like that. So it's going to actually be really interesting to see, and I think it adds even more complexity to the idea once you start adding additional players to it as well.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun testing this, especially in parties, because parties can then start dividing and conquering what you need to do in order to get that high score. And so we expect party scores to be, frankly, ridiculous.
Parties, got to play with friends there for that and stuff. And so I know with leaderboards, when you're looking at leaderboards, like I think we actually have an image of the leaderboards here, just like a quick throw up here. But you can see, based off of how leaderboards are, there is an overall leaderboard. For players, but then you have the ability of actually being able to filter by class, so you can see where you are within your own class.
Yeah, so each class does have a unique ladder, and that's those first 5 icons you see right there represent each of those classes if you're playing solo. And that was really important to us because we were talking about that component of fairness that we want to make sure that the competition is a level playing field. We understand that a ball lightning sork, for example, probably shouldn't be compared to a rogue or something like that. And so we allow each class to compete independently. And then there are also ladders for each of the different party sizes, because obviously a 4-person party probably is going to be able to cover more ground than a 2-person party. And so that actually creates 8 ladders with leaderboards right there. And then we also multiply that by 2 because we have separate ladders for our hardcore players, because they are, well, they're competing on hardcore mode. They should get their own ladders.
Exactly.
And then we also have filters and leaderboards for the different platforms.
Yeah, so you can actually compare yourself. If you're playing on Xbox, you can compare yourself to other players on Xbox. Same thing for PC, which is great to see. Like, we had the option of being able to kind of really filter out and see where we stack against other players in the leaderboard.
And that all gets rolled up into a global leaderboard as well. And all of those leaderboards we mentioned, you are also able to filter by friend and by clan if you want to be able just to see the people you're familiar with and not compete with kind of the community at large.
Yeah, so it's catered and customized to like allow players to actually really get into like almost like a granular type of look of how they may compete against, just maybe everyone, or maybe just everyone on Xbox, or maybe just your friends, or maybe just people in your clan, which is really cool to see. And of course, with leaderboards and tackling leaderboards, as you mentioned, it is a separate dungeon. There are kind of rewards associated with leaderboards as well.
That's right. So, be straight up here, though. The ultimate reward of a leaderboard is glory and bragging rights.
Exactly.
And so, only the top 1,000 players during a week are going to be able to get on the leaderboards. And it's going to be a pretty big accomplishment, but we got to do a little bit better than that. And so not only do we have the weekly leaderboards, we have the Hall of the Ancients, which is the top 10 players from every ladder each week get written to the Hall of the Ancients. Now, unlike the weekly leaderboard, the Hall of the Ancients don't reset. And so that is a permanent record of everyone who is the best of the best each week, each season. And it's not going to ever get erased, going to be there forevermore.
So yeah, you always have bragging rights if you ever want to show to other people, like, even if you come back like in a later season or something, you can always go like, trust me, I know what I'm doing type of thing. Yeah.
But we've got some additional rewards too. We've got some neat cosmetics for folks who, maybe don't hit the Hall of the Ancients, but they hit another threshold on the leaderboards. And we've also introduced another type of reward called seals. Now, I like to think of myself like I could compete, but I know better than that. I am never going to be ranking on those leaderboards ever. And so the seals are meant for players, frankly, like me, who just, not ready for the leaderboards yet. And so what the seals are is, let me describe it this way. So we've got that ladder we were describing, right? And each rung of that ladder is going to have a seal associated with it. And so as you get better and better each week for that gauntlet, you're going to be able to earn seals and start ranking up in terms of the seals that you have. And it's going to go from kind of, I believe it's called Seal of the Blooded, which is the baseline, all the way up to Seal of the Worthy. And once you hit Seal of the Worthy, now you're ready according to the game, to be able to compete in the leaderboard. So for myself, I'm probably just going to be trying to get Seal of the Worthy each week. But it's going to be
right
pretty
there
cool.
with you.
Seal of the Worthy is still something that's pretty cool that you can display to other players to let them know that, you know, you're still pretty good at the leaderboards. It's just maybe you're not on the leaderboard itself.
I believe in you, Dan.
Yeah.
We believe in you.
Yeah, belief is great, but I know my limits. So
Yeah, so lots of cool stuff for Season 3. Gauntlet being a huge part of it. As we mentioned right at the beginning, that Gauntlet won't be at the start of the season, but we do plan. It is a Season 3 thing. It is coming in Season 3. We just want to make sure that players can actually grow their characters at the beginning of Season 3. It's not like a speed run type of thing, just to jump into Gauntlet, especially on the first week of Gauntlet, if we were to have it with the launch of the actual season. So players will hear more news about when Gauntlet actually hits really, really soon. We'll have information on that, and we'll be sharing that with players. But thank you guys for sharing a little bit about some of those Season 3 components. Of course, with a new season, there's a new season journey, and there is a new battle pass. There's a lot of feedback that we got from players and some data that we actually saw from players related to season journey and some optimizations that we've kind of made to make it a little bit more friendly, a little bit better for players specifically. I know one big thing that we ended up hitting on specifically was, for instance, like one of the components for season journey last season was like, hey, you need to kill 10 people in PvP, which made it a little difficult for some people, and we even saw that in some of our data from players. We're looking over the data, we're listening to your feedback, and PvP objectives just aren't that popular. And so because we're always keeping an eye on, improving the game and improving the objectives for the season journey, we decided to modify some of the PvP objectives that exist. And then there's one in particular that we ripped out. It just had such a low completion rate. So there's been optimizations based off of player feedback and of course data that we've seen from that end. And then I know that one big thing is like some of the rewards associated with Season Journey. We have kind of amped them up a little bit specifically.
It's super important for us to make sure that the Season Journey is rewarding. I mean, it's one of the backbones of our season, and if folks feel as if they're not compelled to, go in and participate, then that's a miss for us. So, we went back and really took a close look at the rewards and amped them up in a couple of key ways. The first way we amped them up is we made sure that it was a good vehicle for earning some of those governing stones and tuning stones we talked about. And so you actually get an advanced look for some of those governing and tuning stones if you play the season journey. And so you'll get the drops a little bit sooner, and that'll give you a little more of a leg up with speccing out your Seneschal. The other thing we did is we looked at those later chapters, Champion and Slayer and Destroyer, and we said, wow, those still don't feel rewarding enough. I mean, we're asking players to do a lot there. We're asking them to go into the boss ladder, defeat bosses, really invest a lot of time. So we wanted to make sure those rewards felt meaty. And so we added a number of ancestral legendaries there, including some that are 925 eye power.
Nice.
So hopefully that will be something that folks will really enjoy, and get more folks wanting to take that journey with the season.
Also, something slightly related to season journey and feedback is we got some feedback that previously for our quest lines, you had to complete certain levels of season journey to even progress in the quest line. Got a lot of feedback. People didn't like it. We don't want people not to feel good with it. So starting season 3, you can just do it start to finish. There's no season journey break.
Yep.
Very
so
cool.
It's no longer says level up to chapter 3 of the season journey.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's and again, community feedback has been so helpful for us, especially as we have been iterating on seasons and going from season to season. So it's been super great. Another big thing that's coming with at least season 3 is it's a cosmetic that I think a lot of players have been looking forward to. First, actually, let's actually jump into all this. Actually, can you throw that graphic back up? There we go. Yeah, so there a lot of new cosmetics coming. One big thing I know that was really popular with Season 2 was the Town Portal skins.
Love those Town Portals.
Everyone is rolling with the Blood Portal. I am not rolling with the Blood Portal. I'm like the one person that's rolling with like the Angelic Wings one. If there's other people like that, like shout out to those people. You're part of my crew. But there are also cool new skins and of course new emotes that are coming with the new Premium Battle Pass for Season 3. And then one item that I think we actually haven't really added to since launch is emblems specifically.
Yep.
Emblems are kind of like on your character title or on your character on the character bar for your screen. I have been rocking the Tree of Whispers one for a long time. I'm going to put it into retirement because we are adding new ones here. I believe we're adding, I think it's 3, I believe.
Yeah,
for this
so
season.
you will get 2 new emblems per your adventures in the season journey, and then 3 through the battle pass.
Awesome. So yeah, we're adding in emblems. I know that's something that people were asking about because we've always had the 3 at launch.
Yep.
And so this now gives you the opportunity of actually collecting additional emblems in Season 3. And of course, Season Blessings are also getting adjusted for the new season because I know with the last season, of course, they were specifically catered towards Season of Blood. Yep. This one is, of course, being updated for Season 3, including items that affect like tuning stones, for instance, specifically for players. So Season Blessings will be getting updated for this new season. And then I know that one thing that people, and something I mentioned in the beginning, which is the boss ladder items, that is most definitely coming back for Season 3, so players can expect to have the opportunity of being able to tackle through the boss ladder. And we actually do have some optimizations that we'll be talking about here really shortly related to being able to jump into boss ladders. So yeah, lots of stuff for Season 3.
Yes.
Tons of stuff for Season 3.
Yeah.
Biggest season yet for Diablo 4. And you know, we covered a lot. I'm looking forward to people jumping in. It begins on January 23rd, where players will be able to actually jump in and create new characters for the season. So Dan, Madeline, thank you guys so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then I know for the next part of our broadcast, we're actually going to use some amazing tech. First time we're doing this because we now have 2 different sets. One here in Albany, which is themed like Cathedral of Light. You know, we're in a colder environment. It is cold outside in Albany. I'm not used to that as a California person.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I landed, lots of snow. But it's like Cathedral of Light, Fractured Peaks, you know, kind of feeling. And of course, we'll be going to Irvine, where we're in like the, I hate to say the pits of hell. Irvine is not like hell, I promise. I lived there. But our studio is like that. And that we are going to be joined by Adam Jackson. Adam, hopefully you're there. There you are. Hello.
Hey, I hope you can hear me. I'm always paranoid.
I can hear you live from Irvine.
Cool.
Adam, you know, they always call it the Adam and Adam show whenever you and I are on. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the balance changes coming with Season 3 and what players can expect. And a little bit about some of the philosophy as well of what you have kind of, or what you want to actually present to the players of what they can expect going forward, especially with Gauntlet being involved. So do you want to take it away?
Yeah, totally. Got lots to talk about today, so I'm pretty excited. So I'm really going to be going over 3 different major topics today when we talk about what's coming in for Season 3 and beyond. So the first one is, I think, what everybody expects. We have some new class updates coming. A little bit of a caveat here, though. I'm not going to be going over every single note or every single update, but I am going to give you kind of a high level of what's coming for every class. But you'll definitely find out some more stuff when you look into the patch notes and see other things we're doing.
Oh, we gonna look at
and
the
patch notes are going to be coming out very soon, like
we
tomorrow.
gonna look at the
Tomorrow,
patch
actually,
notes. Oh,
yeah,
we gonna look at the
they're
patch
coming out
We gonna
tomorrow,
look.
so players can expect to see them
Magnifying
tomorrow.
glass.
We'll give you a preview today, but you'll see the full patch notes tomorrow.
Correct. So it'll be a
patch notes tomorrow,
preview,
guys.
but you know, you'll still get an idea of kind of what we're thinking and what we're doing. Next, I want to do a brief explanation of kind of how we currently view class balance. You know, the game's gone through a lot. We've been out for a little while. We also have the Gauntlet coming. So, you know, a lot of changes coming, and we're going to be adapting to it. And then the last thing is kind of a roadmap for our plans for seasonal updates going forward. I kind of want to give people some more concrete ideas of when we update and how we update. So first, we're going to start with the class updates. So first for the Barbarian, we got a few things going on. The first one is some big improvements to charge. Right now charge is, you need a bunch of different legendaries and other effects to make it really kind of sane and be powerful. And we're going to be moving a lot of power to the baseline skill from legendaries and other effects. It's going to do a lot more damage now than it did before. We might be insane, but I think it's really cool, and so we're going to do it. But you can see here, kind of Season 2, what the damage numbers look like. Did like 1,200, and then Season 3, it's like 12,000. So, like 8x or something like that. So it's going to do a lot of damage now, baseline. Of course, legendaries are adjusted to compensate, but yeah, you should have a lot more fun with it out the gate. We're also doing a lot of buffs to key passives, such as Walking Arsenal, to kind of keep them up to date with the one that most people pick, that shall not be named. And then also we're adjusting a lot of shouts. We got a lot of feedback that players don't really like feeling kind of mandatory that they put all the different shouts on their bar. I played a Barbarian last season. I know how it feels. So we're trying to kind of walk this line where we want it to be fun and you can put all the shouts on your bar, but it's not required and you kind of feel like there's good reasons not to. So we've done some changes there. And, if I were a betting man, I'd say I'd put my money into, charge and maybe some key passives as far as things that I think you'll be happy to see. So I think you'll be kind of happy with our changes there.
Adam, whenever we have you on, you have to talk about class stonks, and this is class
do like
stonks.
my stonks.
They got the class stonks here.
So next, let's go over to the Sorcerer. Again, these aren't all the changes. These are just high-level stuff. First one is, we know that Sorcerer players have kind of had some pain trying to apply Vulnerable to enemies, so we're giving it to Lightning Spear now. So just baseline, Lightning Spear, when it crits enemies, will now make them vulnerable. So you have another avenue there that isn't Frost Nova to consistently apply it. We also have some buffs to various Paragon legendary nodes that you can look forward to that kind of open up or make some things stronger. And last but not least, for you Meteor fans, Meteor build is getting quite a few updates and buffs across the board. We also are giving them a new unique that kind of changes how you think about it and how it plays that I'll be showing off in a little bit. So
can't wait to see it. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, totally. So again, here, Meteor players and Elemental Summoner players, like the ones that like to use the different conjurations. We got some stuff there in the legendaries or the Paragon legendary node space that should make you happy.
The stonks.
And next we've got the Rogue. So we've got quite a few changes coming to the Rogue. There's a lot of buffs to really underuse skill and skill upgrades. A lot of people use, Twisting Blades and Poison Imbue and things like that. And we're really targeting some of the things that people aren't using so much and giving them some love. In particular, we're targeting range builds to make them more viable and fun. I think it's the Precision Key passive is getting a bit of a rework, and a lot of stuff coming for things like Penetrating Shot and stuff like that.
Nice.
And we're also updating pretty much all the range uniques, including Windforce, Skyhunter, and Eaglehorn. They're going to be quite a bit more usable and powerful, I think.
And Caltrops.
So here, again, some buffs coming really to range builds in general, and also Caltrops, which is a bit of an underused skill that we're giving some love.
I like Pen Shot. I have fun with
And
Pen
then we
Shot
got
builds.
the Druid next. So here we've got some buffs coming to various spirit boons that aren't seen as much play as others. As an example, Prickle Skin is the one that gives you some thorns. The amount there is being increased by a lot. You can see here in Season 2, it gives about 300 at this level.
Huge buff.
And then Season 3, I think it's doing about 4x what it used to. So some big buffs coming to various spirit boons that are underused. And then also Rabies is getting quite a few upgrades. We got a new legendary coming in for Rabies. That's pretty neat. And then we also have a buff to enhance Rabies. So for all of you that love spreading your poisons among enemies, you're going to be a little bit happy in Season 3. So here again, we got some buffs. I put Rabies here, but also Lightning Storm, and we'll be showing off a new unique there too. I'm actually probably going to play Lightning Storm in Season 3 because it's got a really cool unique coming that we're going to show. So you'll have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to show these uniques. I think people are gonna probably cater their builds for those classes to some of those uniques.
And they're pretty. I mean, we have uniques coming for every class. We're just gonna be showing those two off today. Again, not everything, but they're pretty cool. Last but not least, we've got Necromancer. So Blood and Iron Golems. So fun fact for those of you who didn't know, but the Bone Golem, when it attacks enemies with its normal attack, it actually cleaves and hits nearby enemies. And the Blood and Iron Golems didn't, and they were very jealous and unhappy. And so we just decided to give it to them. So now all your golems, your golem friends are going to AoE cleave when they attack. I didn't put in a note here, but also just golems in general are getting some buffs, and I think even some other minion buffs across the board. But you can see those in the patch notes. And then a quality of life change coming is that Bone Prison, friendly players and your minions can now move through them. We've seen some situations, I know I've played it, where you'll Bone Prison an enemy and you're a minion build, and then your minions actually can't get to the enemy, or they want to go somewhere else and the Bone Prison actually blocks them. So now you and your friends will just be able to go through it. It'll be a lot more usable. And then we got a lot of Bone Spirit upgrades, including a redesign of one of the aspects, which is the aspect of Swelling Curse. I think Bone Spirit players are going to be really happy. So you can see here, on the left is kind of the old version of Bone Spirit, and it basically dealt increased damage based on distance traveled. And the gameplay there was you want to be kind of far away from your enemy and then let it slowly creep towards them. It would do more damage.
Tried it. It wasn't good.
But it turns out Bone Spirit players really just kind of shotgun it and try and get next to enemies. So it wasn't really very usable or good most of the time. So now we changed it where this legendary gives you everything a Bone Spirit player would want. You get more crit chance on Bone Spirit, which means its CDR goes down thanks to its upgrades. And then when you hit enemies, your max essence is temporarily increased, which means more damage on Bone Spirit. So this really just kind of gives you everything.
That's a good change. I like that change. It's a good change.
And so here again, we got some buffs coming to Bone Spirit and to Golems for the Necromancers. So if you use either of those, I think
that change for Bone Prison
well
is very good. I like that change for.
And
Bone
again,
Prison.
these are just some examples. We got a lot more stuff in the patch notes for everybody. Next, let's go over the couple of new uniques. So the first one is that Meteor one I talked about. So this unique is the Starfall Coordinate. It basically being like a spender skill into a charge-based skill. So now you can actually run Meteor with other things like Fireball or Incinerate or Firewall, and it makes it into a very powerful cooldown-based skill that summons a bunch of meteors. It also synergizes with your enchantment, and you basically just drop a lot more meteors around like carpet bombing enemies with them. It's pretty awesome. And then the next one is the new Druid unique. This is for Lightning Storm. Basically, what this does is it makes your Lightning Storm grow quicker, so you can get up to that maximum amount. I think it's 4 or 5 stacks really quickly. And then also, when your Lightning Bolts crit, an additional Lightning Bolt will come down and do more damage. And that additional Lightning Bolt also is still a Lightning Storm Lightning Bolt, so you get all of your synergies with all of your other effects. So basically, it turns into lightning everywhere, is just pretty cool when you combine it with all of the other lightning-based legendaries and stuff. Next, now that we're done with the class updates, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we've been viewing class balance and how we're going to be thinking about going forward in Season 3 and beyond. So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot on the team is kind of thinking about how should we be updating the game when it comes to buffing and nerfing classes and builds, and then also how often should we update it. And I kind of want to get a little into the weeds here to understand where we're coming from. So first is that we want to balance kind of two competing concepts that are always at odds with each other that we believe players want that really make for a fun game and a fun experience, particularly in Diablo 4. But this is honestly kind of true for most games as far as when they update when it comes to balance. So the first one is we believe that players really want to feel like you all can have fun with powerful builds that you discover. Kind of a core part of playing these games is you think outside the box, or you discover something, or maybe even you follow a guide, but you find something that's really cool and awesome, and then you want to go wreck demons and kill stuff with it, right? You want to feel like you have this sense of permanence where you can make something, it's going to be cool, and you can go and have fun with it. But then on the flip side, here we also believe that players want the meta to refresh so that the same things aren't obviously the best choices forever. Right, looking back at Season 2, easy thing to point to is Ball Lightning, right? Ball Lightning was really fun and awesome. Newsflash, it was also kind of bugged. But, during Season 2, a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. But we believe that, if we just kept things like Ball Lightning or Hoda Barb or these things that are really powerful for many seasons over and over, not only Sorcerer players in the case of Ball Lightning, but even players of other classes would start to feel this kind of gravitational pull and a lot of pressure to play the things that are obviously more powerful than other things. And then players will start to feel pigeonholed into being forced to play very specific things.
I talked about
this. And so kind of this dichotomy of these two competing factors where you want to have a sense of permanence and finding things and having fun and not being afraid that Blizzard's going to take it away from you. But you also want to have a sense of, the same thing isn't strong forever. And you look at the leaderboards or you look on forums or wherever you look for your feedback. and everybody just is playing the same things, and you feel like not everything is viable, right?
Oh, Slam Scum with the membership. Thank you,
So,
buddy.
in this vein, some of the larger changes that you're going to see in Season 3 that are kind of bug fixes or nerfs, and, before, a lot during BlizzCon and before we've talked about how you want to give players a heads up of what's coming. So these are the things you're going to see at the launch of Season 3 that are kind of they're having their power lowered. The first one is the Ball Lightning enchantment, or enhancement, sorry, is causing it to deal, too much damage, obviously. The rogues have also been getting extra combo points via very specific unique interactions. That's made them very powerful.
Nerfs.
Twisting Blades, again on the rogue, and Poison Imbue have had some interactions that we're cleaning up that makes it do more damage than was intended. The Druid very recently kind of climbed to the top of the power level in the game due to kind of
A bug with
an
the
unfortunate
double-dipping
interaction
damage.
with Blurred
Yes.
Beast, where you can double dip damage. And then really, we've had a couple cases like this earlier in the game, so we're redesigning this legendary power, where you can kind of apply a dot or some effect, and then something else does damage based on the dot, or dealing damage on something else, and then that damage double dips, and then just goes into crazy town really quick. So we're nipping that in the bud.
1 trillion damage.
For the
There
Barbarian,
was
the
a
Hammer of the
recent
Ancients,
screenshot
the
of
Violent
1
Hammer of the Ancients, which is
trillion
one of the
damage.
upgrades that you can get, was always being applied whether or not you had it, and we're cleaning that up. So basically, everybody would always take the other upgrade, and then they were getting both. And then Overpower, this is more of an oversight, not a bug, but it was kind of just too strong in general. If you remember when Season 2 launched, we redid all the combat math in the game, and back then Overpower, nobody was really playing it. And then we really wanted to give it some love, and we definitely did. So it's a little bit too strong right now, and so it's just getting toned down in general.
Overpower
And now
is
next
too
I want to
strong
talk
in
about our
general.
season roadmap. Kind of, when we were talking about how we think about how often we should update the game, we wanted to let you, the community, know kind of what the conclusions we came to and what we're going to be doing. So right now our plan is to update the game twice per season when it comes to class balance, and really just class updates. We're going to do one update at the launch of a season where you're going to see more kind of large-scale things. The meta is kind of expected to shift a little more. And then we also plan to do a mid-season update, and that'll come somewhere around the center of the season, depending on the exact dates of the patch cycle. So you'll get a little bit smaller of an update there, but still something that'll, do a bunch of buffs, and we're going to go into detail of what you can expect from these. So first, let's talk about season launch and what you can expect when a new season comes when it comes to classes and systems, so on in balance. So the first thing is we're going to be giving you some new content. You can count on this. We're going to be giving new legendaries and uniques that are added to the game. The amount that we do can be variable, but what we can commit to is that every class should be getting something new in this space. So you can expect some amount of new legendaries and some amount of new uniques that'll give you new toys to play with. Next, there are balance updates. We'll be doing both balance and design updates for all the classes. And by design updates, I mean, some more in-depth things where we change around functionality rather than just moving numbers up and down. Again, the amount is variable here. It kind of depends on the needs of the game at the time and how much other stuff that we're doing. But as a general idea, just so you can know what to expect, we plan to do many buffs to things that are underperforming, a few nerfs to the things that are really overperforming, and then bug fixes, which can honestly be both buffs or nerfs, depending on what the actual bug is. And then we also plan to do other game updates. Our team isn't really only just doing classes. We also look at monster balance and feel. We do systems with drop rates and things like that. How quickly players can get things that let them have access to different types of content, all of that. So you can expect that at the beginning of a season. And then last but not least are larger updates and initiatives, right? These aren't guaranteed every season, but we want to launch these when they're ready. These are kind of, the big things that really shake up the game and change how players fundamentally interact with things. An example of some things here, or a couple things that we did in Season 2, we updated the resistance math and combat math to the game, and that was kind of a really big change of just how players interact with monsters and how they interact with their gear and stats and how they scale things. But we also do support for other things that might not seem so obvious, like content like Abattoir of Zir, where we have to go and look at the monsters, we have to look at the scaling, we have to when they do these things. So, we support all of those larger updates and initiatives as well, and you can expect these kinds of things going forward in seasons. But again, not every season. Just depends on when it's ready to come out. And next, let's talk about the mid-season patch and kind of what that looks like. So the first thing is we want to bring back previous season fan favorites. One of the nice things about a seasonal kind of model for a game is that we can experiment with things and then bring back the things that work. So an example of where we did this before was the Malignant Reigns. A lot of the Malignant Hearts in Season 1 had really cool designs that people really liked and got attached to. and we were able to bring that back in the form of unique rings, right? Going forward, we think that the way that we bring back these designs could be legendaries, uniques, or even other ways, right? Like we can maybe just add it as paragon nodes or passives or actives or other ways, skill tree. We don't really want to be limited to it must always be uniques or it must always be legendaries. But what we do want to limit ourselves to is that we definitely want to promise that we can do one thing per class. And we also think that we can pull from all seasonal designs, not only from the previous season, right? If the design of the power mechanic of a season doesn't really fit into something that's evergreen for players, then we don't want to be limited to trying to shoehorn it in. We may just bring back, maybe a lot of Malignant Hearts or a lot of Blood Seals people really got attached to. We don't want to be limited to like, oh, we can only bring back 4 or 5 things, and then we can never bring more. So we're just going to kind of look like what happened in the past and people liked, and then bring some of those things back. And then the balance updates, we also want to do this in the mid-season patch. The scope of this will be smaller compared to the beginning of the season. And we also want to do other game updates, like I said before, to monsters, systems, drop rates, and some of those things. We also want to try mix in a lot of buffs for each class. And then we will be doing bug fixes, and these will be both buffs and nerfs. And we'll go into a little more detail of that in a minute. And then we're really going to try and hit this goal. No promises. These are famous last words for me. But, we want to try and do few to no nerfs that really aren't bugs. And our kind of thinking and philosophy here is that we know that, unlike the beginning of a season, players spent a lot of time farming for these things. And we don't want you to be scared of making powerful stuff and then knowing that we're going to take it away if it's too strong, right? And we want to have a sense of permanence when you start a season that you can try and target something that's cool and then finish it. But sometimes we need to if something's way too far out of control, particularly now that we have the gauntlet coming in. And our plan is to really broadcast the nerfs, whether they're design or bug fixes, before the mid-season update, so that you have an idea of what's coming, so that you can adjust your builds and play accordingly. So now let's give a couple examples here of kind of, if these things had existed in Season 3 and beyond, how would we think about and how would we handle these in a mid-season patch? So, in Season 2, like I mentioned before, the Hammer of the Ancients, this upgrade, Violent Hammer of the Ancients, was just always being applied, right? Basically, overpower builds were just getting 30% more multiplicative damage for free. It was a bug, not intended at all. This is something that we would fix in a mid-season patch. So, like, if this happened in Season 3, you could expect that in the mid-season patch, we would bug fix this, and, that would be a nerf to that build. On the other hand, a little bit more complicated one. So if you remember Ossified Essence, you Necromancer players, this was your key passive, and it was really, really, really good. It basically says that your bone skills deal more damage based on each point of essence you have above 50. The gameplay here that we had intended was, you try and increase your mass essence, which is a fun little itemization game that you have. But then you also have some gameplay of trying to only cast and then get back to max as soon as you can. So you care about resource regen. Like, there's all these cool gameplay and itemization things going on. What we didn't anticipate, though, was that players would get as much max essence as they were able to, or that they were able to keep it as high as they were able to. And those were really just oversights on our part. So then in Season 2, we nerfed this by 50%, a whopping 50%, and I still think this is probably one of the strongest key passives in the game. That's how good it was. It's really good.
It is.
But, it still keeps all the gameplay that it had before.
It's a very
So
strong
what if
key
this
passive.
existed in Season 3? Well, here, this would kind of be more of a question mark for us. We may fix it in the mid-season patch. We would definitely fix it at the start of next season. But technically, this isn't a bug. It's just something that is just really strong that we kind of had an oversight about. Here, we would be looking at, community feedback. How badly is it warping the meta? Are other builds of Necromancer really not able to function at all because this one is so much better? We'd be looking at more things like that are qualitative types of feedback, and then make a judgment call there. And, in these cases, this is where it gets really noodly. Sometimes we may be wrong, but we're going to really try and lean on the side of not changing unless we really feel like it's needed to keep the game healthy. So, again, kind of a recap, a TLDR. First, our strategy here with players is to communicate early and communicate often. We want to let you know, particularly when it comes to nerfs, what's coming and really what we're thinking. And then again, at the start of the season, you can expect some new content in the form of legendaries and uniques. We'll also be getting some more in-depth balance updates, including design updates to things that we feel we could do better at. Lots of buffs, few nerfs, but bug fixes that are both buffs and nerfs to keep the game in a healthy state. And then in the mid-season patch, you get new content in the form of previous fan favorites from other seasons. And then we will be doing a balance patch. It'll be a bit smaller. It'll be mostly buffs, and then bug fixes that are both buffs and nerfs. And hopefully few to no design nerfs is what we're going to try and commit to. And so again, the reason why we're doing this is we really want you to know kind of where we're thinking, and we want to try and commit to concrete things when we can. And this is something that we feel we can commit to you as far as what we bring to Diablo 4 going forward. Again, last thing is that we are open to feedback on this. This isn't set in stone that forevermore we'll be only doing 2 updates per season when it comes to balance. We're trying to find that right amount of time where you feel like you can experiment and have fun, but the same thing isn't strong forever. So, please give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. But this is how we're going to start, and then we're going to go from here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam, for going over all the balance changes coming for Season 3, along with the roadmap, which was really important. And so that's a big thing that we will make sure we do, is obviously communicate often, communicate early, specifically about all the balance changes that may occur with the start of a season, and of course with that mid-season patch. And just for like better understanding within the community, if you follow version numbers of our updates, because we usually do client patches with big patches, usually mid-season patches land around the 0.3 variant of a patch, if you want to go specifically in that. We do have a lot of other quality of life items that are also coming within Season 3 that we do want to get into before we jump into Q&A. And we did want to tackle some of these because these are really big, and these are based off of players and what they're telling us, and of course things and improvements that we've already talked about beforehand that are now actually coming into Diablo 4. One big thing that I know that we mentioned in one of our prior streams with a campfire chat, Mr. Joe Shelley, our game director, actually brought up, which was HellTides. HellTides was something we learned within Season 2 and Season of Blood is everyone really enjoyed Blood Harvest, and Blood Harvest was always up. HellTides, though, were kind of timed in specific moments, and HellTides was something that we wanted to improve upon for players, and now HellTides will actually be up pretty much all the time, so players will be able to actually jump into HellTides whenever they need to. There is a 5-minute break to kind of reset the zone and stuff, but every hour you will be able to jump into a HellTide, which is great. So it's more opportunities to earn cinders, and of course more opportunities to earn and obtain loot, or even things like living steel and stuff to kind of go through the Uber boss ladder, which is great. The other thing is, and this is a controversial topic because I don't know how people actually pronounce this, but I've always called it WASD. Other people call it WASD. Some people call it WASD.
We need a pull-up stat.
I almost want to put a pull-up within
it's
within
not
Twitch
a word.
chat. Maybe you guys can chime in here and let me know what you prefer calling it. I'm going to call it WASD. But WASD controls are coming to Diablo 4. This is actually something we talked about way back at the launch of the game. We heard a lot of players asking specifically for additional control opportunity or options for them, and this actually is a great feature that Drew, I know, who's on the D4 team. Shout out to Drew. I know he's watching, and he's here in this office. But at least for WASD, it offers more accessibility options for players, which is great to see. So WASD controls are going to be in Diablo 4, and this is something we've been talking about.
Yeah. We're also really lucky it came online just as we were putting all those hazards in the dungeons.
Exactly.
So now, the players have even more precise control to avoid.
WASD feels very good with the trap.
WASD, however you want to pronounce it, that is going to be
They like WASD?
Chat likes WASD according to Rich.
It's okay to be wrong.
But yeah, it is coming to the game. And what's really great about this as well is that it is customizable. You can actually change things out and stuff if you'd like. So really happy to see it, and we're happy to hear feedback from players and their experiences with it once they jump into Season 3. And then, of course, we have a new respec mode coming to the skill trees.
Yes.
This is respecing on skill trees has always been a little difficult, and now there's a more optimized way of being able to do so. Another big community item that a lot of players have been asking for. This kind of goes hand in hand with the opportunity of actually taking your whole Paragon board and completely resetting it before, as opposed to doing it one by one that we had beforehand.
It's a lot less finicky now.
There's more opportunities to actually respec and do it in a much more organized fashion with this.
Basically, you don't spend.
And then this has been a huge one. This is specifically for console players. I probably get this question maybe like once every single day about gold trading. Obviously, more gold is in the Diablo for economy or ecosphere with season, especially since season 2. And for console users, like trading gold has been very difficult. It's been slow. It's you could be there for quite a while trying to trade a significant amount of gold. And so the gold trading UI has been updated for console users, so they'll be able to actually trade gold without having to maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes doing so in one trade. So I know that is a big thing that players have been asking for, so we're happy that's actually being included. And then this one is also kind of calling back to what Joe Shelley had brought up in a prior campfire chat, which was higher item scaling in World Tier 4. I think he used a really good example of how world bosses was kind of like, hey, you get 925 gear off of them, and at times it feels like maybe that's like the most optimized way of doing it, and it didn't feel very rewarding in other types of activities, such as like nightmare dungeons, for example. So higher item scaling in World Tier 4 is actually coming into Season 3 and going forward for Diablo 4. So even when you're doing like higher nightmare dungeons, you're going to have way more opportunities of actually obtaining eye level 925 gear, as opposed to before, where it was a much lower chance, and it felt like you should be doing other types of activities beforehand. So making sure that there's more options available, as opposed to just kind of pigeonholing yourself into maybe timed world bosses and stuff like that from that end. And then this one is a point of feedback that we've gotten from a lot of players. And this is something that, we kind of optimized within Season 2 last year. Things like the Living Steel buff based off of community feedback was really big. And so we're actually increasing opportunities to earn the Beast and Ice summoning items. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier in our stream, where with the boss ladder, there will be more opportunities for players to kind of jump into those. So there will be additional summoning items for Beast and Ice, which will then, of course, help you eventually get to Uber Duriel. And this goes hand in hand with some of the Living Steel buffs that we ended up doing in Season 2 within HellTide. So a lot of quality of life updates, and there's additional ones that players will end up seeing within the patch notes that will be releasing tomorrow. So you should check out the patch notes. They'll be hitting on Diablo4.com. Specifically for all the details and all the items that even Adam Jackson was talking about earlier. Now we come to the part where I always mess up names, but actually before we do that, I'm breaking order. Our wonderful production group here is going to be like, "What's wrong with you, Adam?" One thing I did want to call out is we actually have a new promo for Twitch starting with Season 3, and that is our Support a Streamer promo. We had the Support a Streamer for Season 1. We have it again for Season 2. It is a new mount that players can actually earn. This time it's different. Before we only had a select group of streamers. I think it was like around like 2,000 streamers that signed up and opted in. Now it's for any streamer that streams Diablo 4. Thank you, Twitch, for making the engineering updates to allow for it to be just across the whole entire category. Any streamer that is streaming Diablo 4, if you're a viewer and you happen to be watching them, you can either purchase a sub from them or gift a sub, and to a total of 2. So it could be 1 gifted, 1 purchase, or 2 gifted, and you'll actually end up earning the mount as well. You just need to make sure that your Battle.net account is actually linked with your Twitch account, and you are watching a participating Diablo 4 streamer. It'll note it on their channels and stuff for you to earn that mount. So that is coming, and there'll be a blog later today about that specific Twitch supporter streamer program that's going to be launching with the start of Season 3 on January 23rd. So make sure to check it out, and I believe it's actually going to be running for quite a while, like a month or so. Oh, nice. So players will be able to kind of take part in that from their end. But now our favorite part, which is the Q&A. And we're actually going to be going back and forth between Irvine and here in Albany, because Adam Jackson, of course, is still with us to answer any specific questions related to class and class balance that players may have. But I know one question that, as we queue up questions specifically from our side and have my live feed right here, will attempt to not butcher names. Maybe I will. spoilers. But one question that we do have is, how have the team's thoughts changed in regards to balance since Diablo 4's release? This is a question for Mr. Adam Jackson in Irvine. If you could help us with that answer.
Yeah, let me think. It's a deep question, but I think okay. So, I guess we'll start with, because there's like a long history of balance, right? I think there's actually a very good story, and we could start even before launch and going into launch and how we thought about things. But I think we'll start with like season 1 and the transition from kind of the launch version of the game into our first season, right? Obviously, when we launched the game, we had some pretty benign ideals, I think, of, hey, we want all the classes to be within a certain power range of each other, and everything should be viable for everyone, and, basically everything feels good, and there's a lot of different ways to play, right? And then one of the issues that we ran into this season 1 that I think is interesting to talk about is we realized that in our quest to make items and item stats really fun and powerful and interesting, we had over budgeted on quite a few of them. And I think just in the interest of time, I'll pick on cooldown reduction. It's a very scary stat to me and the team. So, we realized in the launch version game, the cooldown reduction was too high, right? And so players are basically able to solve cooldown reduction, use that with air quotes, and get to a point where they had very low, if any, cooldowns on a lot of their skills.
Yes.
And this was true for many stats, not just cooldown reduction. But one of the problems that we knew was going to come up that was a kind of future us problem, or really almost immediately us problem, is that if we let players solve these things, whether it's defensive stats, cooldown reduction, resource, whatever it may be, and we let them solve it only in gear, then we're going to get to a state where we can't give exciting things to you anymore that you're going to be really happy about and that will feel impactful, because you just got it all in gear, right? And while gear does need to be cool and interesting, if you completely solve these things, I can't give you a legendary power, or I can't give you something late game that really buffs and changes your build in a meaningful way if you got it from just one source. And so then we launched season 1, and we're like, okay, we're going to kind of eat our vegetables here, and we're going to preserve the long-term health of the game, but we're going to do these very necessary nerfs, and there are quite a few, right? And even at the time we did this, we knew, we tried to mix in a bunch of buffs and, try and make it feel good, but we just didn't hit the mark, right? We kind of failed in that endeavor. We did, do the necessary things to bring the game in a long-term healthy state, but it came at the cost of player fun and player sentiment. And so you went from the beginning preseason to season 1, and the game overall just got quite a bit less fun because you were just less powerful and you weren't compensated enough from the player point of view. And so we kind of learned a lesson there of like, we need to be a little bit more thoughtful and careful of when we roll out these things and how we roll them out, and then also how we communicate it, right? Because we didn't really tell people the intricacies of these problems. We just came out with a patch and let you figure it out, and that didn't go too well, right? So then in season 2 came around, and we did a big combat math update to the game. We were kind of a little worried because we had to kind of thread this needle of, we also were nerfing player power because we changed a lot of multiplicative synergies to be additive, but we wanted to do it in a way where you felt more powerful and it felt more fun and fair. So we had to do a lot of more work on the monster side and balance monsters to the new expected player power when vulnerable is not always multiplicative and all of these other crazy things going on. And I think we threaded that needle really well. A little bit to my surprise, I'll be honest. I was a little scared going into it because it's just such a big update, right? And then we also decided during season 2, when it came to balance, that instead of trying to nerf and whack-a-mole things that are really strong and immediately take them away, because it's not supposed to be that way, we just kind of let it ride. And so that's why you saw things like Ball Lightning, Hoda Barb, the Druid, Poison Druid, Rogue combo. Like many classes had just something that was kind of crazy. And we just let it go. But even now, towards the end of season 2, we're seeing that, some people are starting to be a little upset, like, hey, these same builds are just killing everything. And if I want to do the really hard content, I have to be one of these things because that's the only thing that works. And obviously, we don't want that to be the future of the game forever. And so now we're trying to come up with a more balanced approach of how we see these things. And that's why, again, I was saying kind of in my presentation, we're thinking a lot of, how often do we update actually really matters, I think, from your point of view as a player, because that determines how long you are safe to do something that feels crazy and awesome and powerful. But then also how we update the game matters as well, of like, hey, are we okay with, 1 or 2 things being really strong for a while, or what is the range that something can be too strong before we consider it a problem? That's another subject that maybe I'd like to go into in the future, or more in depth in the future, but I think that kind of answers the question. It's already a little long-winded, so I'll leave it there.
All good. No, I appreciate it, Adam. And so we're going to go through some additional questions. I might be going back to Adam, but I know one question that we at least have gotten regarding Season 3 is, this is from Ice Vixen. I'm attempting. What about group play in vaults? How does that specifically work? Because obviously there's like the warding buff and everything. How do rewards kind of associate with that?
Right. So you are able to group up and play through a vault. And yeah, it behaves pretty much like any other Nightmare dungeon. And so, you know, there are instances where if you leave the dungeon, you will lose the buff. So we're trying to avoid some cases where players might try to cheat their way to the end.
Yeah.
But overall, you know, we're trying to be as supportive as possible for group play.
Awesome. Makes sense. And then I know this is a question back for Adam, a popular question regarding minion builds and plans for minion builds. I know this one has been brought up in chat quite often. What are the plans for like maybe Necromancer or Druid minion build specifically?
Yeah, I definitely don't get asked this all the time. So let me think. So we know the feedback that people want minion builds to be kind of more impactful, and these are now I'm kind of going into my opinion, but I think a lot of that feedback comes from a combination of, you know, they don't feel necessarily maybe as powerful as other builds, which we can and we do. And if you've noticed in our past patches, we've consistently been number buffing minion builds, and even this patch does have some number buffs in that realm. But I think a more complicated, difficult problem to solve is kind of the relationship between the player and the minion, and making the minions feel really cool and awesome, and your investment into them really pay off in a way that is kind of more visceral. That is a harder problem to solve that requires it's in my mind, and I'm not promising anything, but you know, these are things like, you know, rethinking of how the Book of the Dead upgrades work, and that relationship between sacrificing and minion upgrades, and really trying to make them do more visually, I think, cool and awesome things, and maybe more reacting to you, and so you feel like they're doing a lot more on their own a little bit. That's kind of the direction that we think. We don't have anything to announce right now as far as that. And Druid Companions, I think, are kind of in a similar vein, even though they don't have quite the same support in fantasy that Necromancer does, because they don't have a Book of the Dead, for example. But I think players really just want this visceral feeling, like I've got my gain with me, and we're all going and messing with stuff. So, you know, we're doing number buffs now. It is a thing that we are looking at. I don't have any promises of when, because again, this is something that I think is a little more difficult to tackle, and we have other things that we're tackling that are, you know, a little more difficult coming in the near future. But it is something that we know of and that will definitely be coming. I just don't know when.
Awesome, I appreciate it. A question related to Uber uniques on Uber vaults. Is that something that players can find there, or like what can they find in that?
So Uber uniques are still the domain of Duriel at this point. That's going to be your best shot for getting Uber uniques. But we still wanted to make the Uber vault rewarding, and so for the Seneschal construct, we've actually created several unique tuning stones, which really we haven't given away too much information about, but defeating Uber Malphus is going to be the only way to earn those.
Awesome. Yeah, so players will be able to get really, really powerful, unique tuning stones specifically from those. And I will spoil it a little bit. We did technically have PC Gamer did a good interview with Sean, and I know it was kind of revealed specifically in one of the shots there. So if people want a sneak peek of what one does, there is an opportunity to actually check it out there. So people can actually see it there. Another question back for Adam. This is another big question within chat. Oh, by the way, Beefcake Monster asked that last question. I forgot names, but this one is actually asked by a lot of people, so just many names specifically.
Sure.
Snapshotting. Snapshotting is something that kind of appeared, especially
snapshotting exploits.
Avatar of
I'm glad they're covering this.
Do we have any plans regarding snapshotting and what we might do for that?
Yeah, we do have things coming. I don't have anything to announce today. It won't be at the beginning of Season 3, but we do have fixes coming for snapshotting. We're aware of the problem. It came on a little hot at the end of Season 2, but yeah, we've talked about it. We've seen it. We kind of know the intricacies of it, and we'll be taking a look at it. in the near
Awesome.
future.
Awesome, I appreciate it. A question that I've also seen a few times in chat about Zoltan Cool, funny enough, do we like encounter Zoltan Cool in this?
Do not encounter him. He is still dead. No digging up his head this time. But you will hear his voice. We have several lore books that drop throughout the vaults, and generally his presence. And Ayujan speaks of him quite often.
Of course, we have to hear Zoltan Cool and his wonderful voice
Yes.
of talking down to everyone. So that makes perfect sense. I know a question regarding the vault specifically. Is that an area that players can actually maybe potentially level up Paragon glyphs, or is that still something that is tied to Nightmare Dungeons?
So the Nightmare versions of Vault should work the same way as Nightmare Dungeons in that respect. And
Awesome.
you should be able to level up your glyphs there too.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that a lot of people were hearing about the Nightmare Vaults and they're going like, well, does that serve also the same, like, can I do almost like get both objectives in one type of thing, which you now can. And that was from Galley055 who asked that question specifically. And then I know a question we have from UN Tanks Up. Bad. Terrible, Adam. How many times can we do the gauntlet in a week?
So we have not restricted players' access to the gauntlet. I think it's the type of content we want people to try and master. And in order to be able to do that, you've got to be able to practice and you've got to be able to improve. And so really you can play it as much or as little as you want. Which is a change, again, from something like a Nightmare Dungeon where you need a sigil. The only requirement right now is that you are World Tier 4 and that you think you're ready.
Yeah. So again, you can jump into these specifically before, gauntlets specifically before hitting level 100. Usually preferred to go in at level 100, but you can try tackling it a little bit earlier if you want. And you can do it as many times as you want, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see how players optimize because, of course, they change every single week and they get to kind of like learn and they get to kind of maybe modify based on how many people are within their party, which is really, really cool. A question that we also have been getting regarding some of the I lost my question now. I'm so bad at this. The itemization updates that we have talked about in the past. A lot of people are asking like, hey, is that still on track for Season 4? This one was specifically from Fermel. Yes, that is still on track for Season 4. We have a really massive itemization update coming specifically for that season. And we'll have more news to share as we get closer to Season 4. But for right now, we don't have news to share with the community for Season 3 regarding that. But it will be pretty significant, and we'll be talking about that more in a future stream here coming down the line. And then, let's see, any updates regarding like some of the group finders or social features? I know that is also another big question that a lot of players have been asking over the last, couple months, specifically about, hey, are we making any changes and everything towards that? And really, this is something that we addressed at BlizzCon as well. I think Tiffany answered this one, where it is something that we're looking into, and the team is obviously seeing the feedback, and it's something that we're planning on working and making better through the lifetime of Diablo 4. So players can expect to see better and more optimizations towards the social features and the friend finder specifically from that end. Let's see. Do we get more sources of Uber uniques for this specific season? Really, the best way of grabbing Uber uniques is through the boss ladder for sure, through Uber Duriel. And there are more. You can of course find Uber uniques anytime throughout the game. It's just there are higher chances through Uber Duriel, and that is still the same specifically for this season. And there, of course, now more opportunities to go into that fight now, since we've like amped up a lot of the drops specifically around like Living Steel from Season 2 to the Beast and Ice summoning items now with Season 3. So players will actually be able to kind of jump into Uber Duriel specifically from that end. Let's see. I know we get a lot of questions about Field of View. From players asking like, hey, is there any update of like, Are you guys planning on actually increasing the field of view? Right now, we don't have any plans towards that. It's just something that we've been hearing a lot from players. There's a lot of work that, of course, has to go into something like that. But whenever we do have an update, we'll make sure to actually provide that specifically on that end. Codex updates is another big thing because people have been asking about the codex updates. I'm just like kind of shotgunning. I'm seeing like words appear in chat. I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. That is something that we talked about before, and that work is currently underway, and that will also be part of a future season. And it is a massive update. It's something that we had talked about beforehand on previous streams, which was kind of helping out with inventory, making sure those specific aspects were like pulled out of inventory and kind of stored within the character or cataloged within the character. So we will have more info on when that actually ends up hitting soon. But there's a ton of things that are coming to D4 to help address a lot of some of this community feedback specifically on that end. And then question regarding Gauntlet.
Okay.
This is from RM Dragonheart. Will you be able to inspect the top players in Gauntlet and see what builds they're potentially using?
So you will be able to inspect the top players from Gauntlet. There'll be a link from the leaderboard to a player's profile. And you'll be able to see what they're playing currently. But we do not save a snapshot right now of what they played at that moment.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to see kind of like, top builds and stuff like that, you have the opportunity to, but it does, if they happen to change their build overnight or something like that, it's going to grab whatever that existing build is specifically from that end. And then I know we've gotten, or this was a question from Max, not TV, regarding Malphus. Do we have any plans of Malphus becoming maybe potentially an endgame boss outside of the season? Or are we planning on maybe, introducing it in like a boss ladder in the future?
Right. So every season, much as Adam described for Power, we take a look at those elements that we really liked from a previous season to see if we can bring them forward. Certainly people on the team like fighting Malphus. Hopefully y'all enjoy fighting Malphus too. If you like fighting him enough, then perhaps in the future, we could bring him over to the boss ladder.
Yeah,
but,
just like Farshawn.
Yeah, but we're no commitments to that quite yet.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I know we went through some questions here, and we're a little over beyond. We were aiming for 90 minutes. We're a little beyond. It's totally fine though. Really appreciate. Yeah, a lot of stuff in season 3. Really appreciate everyone providing questions. And if you have additional questions, of course, make sure to ask them over social media, Reddit, forums. We're always checking those out, and of course, we'll try to address them in either future streams or immediately if we can after the stream. Again, patch notes for season 3 and the new 1.3 patch are going to be hitting tomorrow. So make sure to check Diablo4.com specifically for those patch notes. It's a big one. Always a big patch notes when you start off a new season specifically. And we have a lot of other activities that are going on within the Diablo universe. Diablo 3 started their new season just a couple weeks ago. D2, repping D2 today. There we go, D2R. D2, I know we've gotten a lot of questions about when the next ladder will be. We'll have more news on that in February. We don't expect a ladder reset to happen until February, but we'll give you a specific date as we get closer to February. Of course, DI has a ton of new updates as well. They had a big update before the holiday regarding familiars being added to the game, and they've been expanding on that. So there's a ton of stuff coming to the Diablo universe. D4, even earlier this month, we talked about how we will have ray tracing and a lot of those features coming into Diablo 4 here really soon. So players should expect to see that within a future update really soon. So I'm super excited for those items. But lots of stuff within the Diablo universe, and of course, season 3 hitting on January 23rd. I just want to thank Madeline, Dan, Adam Jackson from Irvine. I'm looking forward to flying back and saying hi again, Adam. But I want to thank you guys for of course, joining us on this special developer update live stream for Season 3. And just a heads up for people that are watching, our friends at Xbox are actually doing an Xbox Developer Direct that's going to be starting here really soon. So make sure to check that out on the Xbox channel on Twitch and on YouTube. And of course, we'll be raiding into some of our wonderful Diablo partners on YouTube and Twitch. So make sure to tune into them immediately after the stream. But thank you guys again for tuning in for the developer update for Season the Construct, which is launching on January 23rd. Patch notes tomorrow on Diablo4.com. And yeah, thank you guys from Albany. Really appreciate it.
Thank
See you guys in game.
Have a good one.
Uh-oh. Rating Anna Cake live. All right, so we're going to go over this real quick. My freaking the sun is like killing my freaking doojanks here. I don't know what the hell's going on. I think the sunlight is like blinding the camera. So I'm gonna change that for a second. I'll just have the light blind me instead. That's how you fix that. You fix it by blinding. I want to go over a lot of this stuff that they talked about. There's a lot of things individually that we can discuss. Let's go ahead and go down a step here. Sorry, I got to fight with my camera because of the sunlight. All right, let's pull up the live stream. Here it is. This is the live stream. And let's go back through this if we can. So, I really liked the section with the other Adam, where they were talking about the class balance changes going forward, the stonks, so to speak. That was pretty cool. And we basically just kind of went over like what they expected for each class. So Barbarian is getting a bunch of buffs to charge, apparently, and I like the direction that they're moving here. So it's very important to remember that sometimes it's very bad to balance items around, or a skill around items, so that you have to wear a bunch of items to make the ability useful. And one of the things they did is they're moving a lot of the power from the legendaries to the base skill itself. So you have to put on less pieces of equipment to make the item useful. I think they're starting to realize that itemization is not all about putting power on the items. It's about having a very useful skill that you can then modify. And in a lot of these situations, the skill itself, the base skill, is not useful. And so that's actually causing part of the issue, is that the base skill just isn't useful. So in this particular case, they're increasing the base skill to make it actually, be useful, which is definitely very nice. And as you can see, they show like a representation of like the damage increase on the ability, like from Season 2 to Season 3. And then we also have buffs to key passives. So it's no stranger. There's no question which passive was the winner of basically Season 2, and that was the Berserk passive, because the Berserk passive gave massive amounts of damage. They added that multiplier, and the Berserk passive became literally the best passive, and nobody else wanted to touch any of the other passives at that point because the Berserk passive was just so good. Well, now that they have done that, they're going to take a look at some of the other passives and actually make them a little bit more interesting, which is definitely nice for the Barbarian. They also kind of addressed the multiple shouts thing, where people always kind of feel like you have to wear, actually have like all 3 shouts or no shouts. I'm kind of interested to see how they address this, because it definitely will be interesting if they can address this successfully. Because as it is right now, you either use all 3 shouts or you pretty much just don't use any shouts at all. It's kind of like one or the other. And going forward, we also have, they said they were going to work on some of the bleeds too. Like they did like this little stonks thing in the corner, and it looked like what is that? The gushing wounds. Let me move myself out of the way of the stonks. They got the icons for what's going to be coming in the buffs, and they didn't really talk about the bleed, but it was there. In fact, let me just boop. There, yeah, right there. That sounds good. That looks good. All right, so going forward, we got the sorcerer. They talked about the sorcerer like the little, I wouldn't want to call them pets, but the conjurations. Apparently, they're going to do a lot of work to the conjurations. Lightning spear specifically also makes the monsters vulnerable. And then they also kind of showed the little stonk picture in the side. They showed Hydra as well. So Hydra, Blades of Ice, Lightning Spear, and apparently Meteor has gotten a bunch of work. They also apparently have done some work to the Paragon Legendaries. We'll find out about like the specifics of that in the patch notes tomorrow, so that'd be interesting. They also showed this really cool Meteor weapon, which we can see if we can take a look at those uniques in a minute. But it basically gave like multiple meteor strikes at the same time, which seemed really interesting, especially if you combine it with the enchantment that makes it like a % chance to get more meteor strikes on top of that. So definitely seems really interesting. I'm actually kind of tempted to make a meteor sorceress this season because of that. It looks really fun. Rogue buff to underused skills, and of course, what's the most underused skills on the rogue, if not all of the range skills and caltrops. So basically, multi-shot, was it like barrage, penetrating shot, and what was the other one? I can't remember the name of the third one. But basically, they're all getting worked on. And I actually really kind of like that. They're also changing Wind Force, Sky Hunter, and Eaglehorn. I absolutely love Penetrating Shot. I think Penetrating Shot's one of the most fun builds on the Rogue, but it's also very lacking in terms of single target damage, and it has trouble killing bosses. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage to change Penetrating Shot to be more viable versus, like bosses, for instance. Because I think that's the main issue with most of the range builds, is that they're good at killing large groups of monsters, but they're terrible at killing bosses. With the exception of, what is the one? I think it's Barrage, the one that's kind of like Strafe. I think that one works fairly well at killing bosses. But the fact that you have to have like 2 core skills just to do things properly on the ranged characters is kind of silly. The Druid, they talked about beefing up the Thorns on the Prickle Skin. I've never really heard of a Thorns Druid, but I guess with the Prickle Skin giving you a huge Thorns amount, maybe combined with a couple other Thorns items, you could possibly get your Thorns up pretty high. They also talked about buffing up Rabies and giving it a legendary effect, a legendary item. I have tried Rabies like 4 times now, and every single time I am very disappointed in the way Rabies works. So I really hope they actually buff up Rabies to be useful, because it just, no matter what I do for that stupid skill, it just always feels just really bad. I'll try it again. I've always wanted to make a Rabies Druid, but I don't know what it is. It just never quite feels right. Necromancer, they talked about Blood and Iron Golem being brought up to spec with the Bone Golem. Apparently the Bone Golem always had like a frontal cleave attack. And the Blood and Iron Golems did not, and so they basically gave the Blood and Iron Golems the same cleave attack that the Bone Golem has. Also, big win, they made it so that friendly players and minions can now move through Bone Prison, so you no longer have to dodge through the Bone Prison. And big win for the Bone Prison Necromancers, because now you don't have to hear the crap from all your friends about being stuck inside the Bone Prison. Many Bone Spirit upgrades, including a redesign of the aspect of Swelling Curse. So, Bone Spirit is definitely an interesting one, and I'd made an entire Bone Spirit Necromancer last season. It works. It's not the most optimal thing in the world, but it works. This aspect I actually tried out, and I actually found to be kind of poopy, that it really didn't work very well at all, and you were much better off just putting something else that gave damage as opposed to using this one. They've kind of reworked it into more of like a critical strike chance with maximum fury for each enemy hit, which the maximum fury actually does sound really interesting when combined with the Ossified Essence key passive. Although now I'm a little bit scared because they talked about nerfing the Ossified Essence key passive. He talked specifically about how the Ossified Essence key passive was a little bit too powerful and it had been nerfed before, and how it might be further addressed in the mid-season patch, although they're not apparently touching it at the beginning of the season. So, yeah. Honestly, Adam's stuff here was way better than like the entire first part of the stream. Like, they could have just cut out the whole first part of the stream and it could have just been the Adam part of the stream, and I don't think anybody would have cared. The let's see here. They showed off some of the uniques. So this is the Starfall Coronet. The Starfall Coronet is a helmet, of course, so it's going to consume the same slot as like a Harlequin Crest Shaco or whatever, if you can manage to get one, which is rather unfortunate because there are really a lot of nice helmet pieces. I kind of wish they hadn't done the helmet. And it's just specifically because there's so many really good unique helmets, like Godslayer Crown, like the Harlequin Crest Shaco and Dariel's Visage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, this is just going to compete with those even more. But it has 1,008 maximum life, so up to 1310. It looks like they actually did upgrade it to 5 out of 5, so these are the max stats. 10.3% cooldown reduction, 4 meteor ranks, which is actually kind of sweet. Meteor is not a core skill, right? It's a mastery. It's a mastery skill. I believe it's mastery. Where do you get your mastery skills? Is it your pants? So you could technically get +8 with the pants. So you could get a pretty nice amount of skills. I mean, you could still get +4 if you managed to get your hands on a Shaco, but also gets 24.8% lucky hit chance, which would probably help the whole like extra meteor thing on the enchants. And then the special effect is Meteor now has 2 charges with a 9.5 second charge cooldown, so anywhere between 11 to 6. Instead of a mana cost, and drops 3 additional meteors around the target. Meteor's enchantment effect and enhanced meteor drop 1 additional meteor. So that's pretty big there, because Meteor's enchantment effect basically makes it so that if you hit more than a certain number of monsters with your meteor, or is that the additional bonus passive? Actually, there's 2, I think, the enchantment effect and the additional bonus passive. So if you set this up properly, you could potentially have just like freaking 10, 20 meteors falling on a target, just like could be pretty beast. I could see this being a really strong build. The elders say they saw a star falling from the sky many years ago, a sign from the heavens that the end times were nigh, and rallying cry to take up arms and protect sanctuary. As you can see from the footage, it definitely seems like you can cast like 1 meteor and then have like several more fall on the ground. It's pretty interesting. And then we have this one, which is the Unsung Ascetic Wraps. It's a pair of gloves. Again, a pretty competitive slot, but it does have crit strike chance, at least a 12% crit strike chance. So that's like one of the main things you get on your gloves. So at least it has like the right stat. It also has Lightning Storm, which again is the right stat for gloves. So 3 to 4. 3 ranks of the Defiance passive. What is the Defiance passive? The Defiance passive is Nature Magic skills deal 4% increased damage to elites. Okay. 24.8% lucky hit chance, and then its Lightning Storm gains 1 additional strike each time it grows. Critical strikes cause Lightning Strike to strike twice, dealing 20% increased damage. So the entire idea here from what they were saying is that the bigger your Lightning Storm gets, the more strikes you have, and the more strikes you have, the more strikes you have. Because the critical strikes cause more strikes to occur, and you basically just get like a massive number of lightning strikes appearing all over the place. Could be a very fun season to do. One of the builds that me and some of the other kinship members had made is a lightning. It's like a lightning druid build where basically you go with like every lightning effect that you can possibly go with. So you just have tons of lightning effects all over the place. You go with the ones that charge the monsters and shoot lightning bolts out. You go with the lightning storm. You go with like every lightning ability that you can, to the point where literally you just like hold down the button and the whole screen just like explodes with lightning in every single direction. That one was a very fun build that was tier 100 capable, by the way. I don't know if we ever tested it in Abattoir of Zir, but it was a very fun build, and this unique looks like it would just build upon that build entirely. So looks like I'm going to be doing a lightning druid this season. Moving forward, they talked about class balancing moving forward, and they did a lot to talk about how like there was way too many ball lightning sorceresses and way too many Hoda barbarians, and it was not what they wanted to do. They didn't want players to feel like they were pigeonholed into playing specific builds, which is a thing. That is a thing, and it definitely did happen this season. There was like 3 main builds, and those 3 main builds were the only builds that anybody ever wanted to play. And they went over and they talked about the main things that are bugs that they are going to fix. Now, they specifically said that this stuff is considered a bug and that they want it to, to go the way of the dinosaur, essentially. Ball lightning enchantment is causing too much damage, and they feel that this is a bug, so the ball lightning is going to get the nerf. Rogue extra combo points via the unique. Everybody knew that was a bug, and everybody exploited the crap out of that during the season, and I can't help but think that everybody knew that that was going to go. If you really thought that that was going to stay, I don't know what to tell you. We all knew it was bugged, and we had fun with it. We had fun with the bug while it was there, and they didn't take it away because they were honestly waiting for season 3, and they were kind of afraid of our feedback on that. But it did need to go, and I think everybody knows that the extra combo points needed to go. Rogue twisting blades, poison imbue interactions. There was a couple really crazy interactions with the poison imbue and twisting blades, and that is a bug. It's been confirmed as a bug. Druid's blurred beast aspect, and it needed to be redesigned. They talked about the double dipping damage and how it was basically bugging itself to like 1 trillion damage. Basically, what was going on is that the damage was actually being calculated like 2 separate times, and it was double dipping into the multipliers. So imagine if you had like 1,000 damage, and then you multiplied that by like, say 500% or something, and that gives you 5,000 damage. But then you multiplied it by 500% again, which gave you another ridiculous increase. The aspect of the blurred beast was basically allowing the druid to just double dip into crazy numbers. And it wasn't only this that was causing the issue. It was also a snapshotting problem, which they addressed later. There's a whole issue where people are basically snapshotting effects, unique effects, key passives, all sorts of crazy stuff. And that was compounding this issue as well. It wasn't just this, but apparently this has been identified as a bug, and the blurred beast aspect is going to get redesigned. Violent Hammer of the Ancients is always applied. Overpower being too overpowered. Everybody knew Overpower was broken in Season 2. Everybody exploited the crap out of it. I mean, if you built an Overpower build, you knew exactly what we were talking about. Hoda barbs, blood necromancers, all sorts of other crazy things. They tried really hard for a long time to get us to use Overpower because Overpower was very underwhelming. In Season 0, in beta, in Season 1, and all of it, like the entirety of the entire like launch of the game from like beta to Season 0 to Season 1, Overpower was absolutely laughable, and nobody wanted to touch it, and they kept trying to buff it up, and they failed over and over and over again. And then finally they made it, they made people want to use it, because they literally made it so powerful that it was kind of hard to ignore. And it was obvious to everyone who played Season 2 that Overpower needed to be toned down. And so we're definitely not going to see the crazy Overpower in Season 3 that we saw in Season 2, but hopefully they don't nerf it into the dirt, because it was fun to actually see Overpower for the first time in its life actually be overpowered. No pun intended. Moving on. Moving. He spent a long time on that one. They also talked about a mid-season update, and the mid-season update was going to have a bunch of things on it. So apparently they're going to make sure that every class gets something new. There's new legendaries, there's new uniques. There's 6 new unique items, 1 for each class, basically. And then there's probably 1 for everybody, because there's, 5 classes. And then the balance and design, I would assume that one of the uniques, my assumption, one of the uniques is a uber unique, so we're probably going to get 1 new uber unique as well. They talked about rebalancing some of the less used skills, and I'm trying to see, they had a kind of like a graphic here where they were talking about adding in some of the old powers too. So we may end up getting some vampiric powers as kind of in a similar example of how we got some of the malignant powers as rings. And they said they wanted to add at least one per class. So we could be looking at getting some of the vampiric powers back for the next season. But the real problem is with this one per class thing is that none of the vampiric powers, unlike the malignant powers, none of the vampiric powers were really pointed at any specific class. They were more or less pointed at specific things, you know, like basic skills or pointed at channeling skills and so forth and so on. So I'm not really sure how they're going to bring those uniques or those powers back in that way. Honestly, some of those powers were really nice, and they were things you could build entire characters around, like the Moonrise power or the channeling power that actually made channeling skills halfway worth using. In general, like some of those powers really do need to come back. I'm not entirely sure all of them need to come back. I don't know. The Undying power, for instance, that one could definitely be up in the air a little bit. What else were they talking about here? I usually keep notes on this. I should have kept notes. So this is something where they were talking about like stuff that they're going to fix in mid-season. So Violent Hammer of the Ancients is apparently going to get fixed in mid-season. Ossified Essence, which they talked about in detail earlier about how they kind of nerfed it already once and how it kind of needs to be addressed again in Season 3. So apparently Ossified Essence is going to get another adjustment in Season 3 because it's still overpowered. He made some comment about how like he didn't realize just how high people were going to be able to stack their essence. And the funny thing about that is, like, why would you underestimate people's ability? You literally made a mini game, right? You're like, here's the mini game. Stack your essence as high as you can. Keep your essence as high as you can when you fire your abilities, right? And then we played the mini game, and we played it correctly. And they're like, well, dang it, we didn't expect you to get that many points. Like, how did you do that? That was crazy. We didn't expect you to stack your points that high. Like, how would they not know that we're stacking our points that high, though? Like they're the ones that made the equipment. They're the ones that made the skills. They know how high we can stack our points. I mean, how hard is it to pull your hands out and like add up the numbers? I mean, use somebody else's hands if you got to, apparently. But like, they're the ones that put the maximum essence on the equipment in the first place, and on the abilities, and in the sacrifice tree, and in the Paragon board, and all that stuff. They know exactly how much we're capable of getting. So I don't really understand, honestly, why this is even an issue. Like, they should have these numbers on hand and know what the hell's going on. They were like, the maximum that a necromancer can ever feasibly get is, and then like they know the exact number, and then they know the exact multiplier that we're capable of getting up to, right? I mean, you would think that they would have this stuff on hand. They talked about the HellTides being basically permanent now with a 5-minute break in between, but that was in Season 2. The WASD controls, I mean, for the people who were interested in that, that's definitely useful, especially with the traps coming up. We're going to need tighter control over the characters than we might be able to get otherwise. I'll totally forget to even use the WASD keys, though. Skill tree respec mode, basically what they did was they let you kind of like play around with the tree without having to spend gold, and then you can confirm spending the gold after you've finished the tree. You know, a lot of the times, like when I would do the tree, I would sit there and pull a point here, put a point there, put a point back, and I would spend lots of gold in the process just pulling points out and putting them back over and over again. The whole entire goal of this skill tree respec mode is basically just to make it so that you can completely play around with your tree, do whatever you want to, and then once you're finished, then you can hit confirm, and everything will be solidified, and you spend the money. But you won't spend any money until you actually hit the confirm button, which seems a little bit better than the way they had it before. They also talked about gold trading UI updates. It was really hard to trade gold on consoles, especially large amounts of gold. So I'm assuming that probably is going over trading large amounts of gold. Yay bots, I guess. higher item scaling in World Tier 4. There was an issue, honestly, like you would go into an area, like a high-level Nightmare Dungeon in World Tier 4, say like a 100, and it would drop like 800 items, like 800 item power items. Apparently what they've done, there was a couple things where they talked about how like in 90, so Nightmare Dungeon 90 plus is what they said. So NMD 90 plus is basically going to guarantee 925 items at this point, which is what it should have been in the first place, because that's how they kind of said it. Was they were in season 2, they made this big deal about how they increased the item power, or the minimum drop of the item power of items as you increased in the difficulty. But then we got to tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons, and it was still dropping like garbage loot. So it looks like at least we will be seeing some much better loot in the future from Nightmare Dungeons and higher tier content. Increase the opportunities to earn Beast in the Ice summoning, so I'm not really sure what they're going to do there, but the only way to get Beast in the Ice previously was to do Nightmare Dungeons. You had to just continually do Nightmare Dungeons repetitively forever. For most people who spammed Nightmare Dungeons like crazy, it really wasn't that big of an issue. They also talked about how during Season 3 there's going to be a support a streamer. I am a affiliate, so if you hop to my channel and you want to get this horse, I believe the support a streamer thing was something like gifting 2 subs, which isn't really all that expensive. But basically the horse will cost you 2 subs to get. I mean, it's a fairly kind of blandish horse. Looks like a chestnut color with like a tattoo on his forehead. I'm not really sure. That's okay. They said it's going to be active for all streamers who are streaming Diablo. So if you come into my stream at any point, I do have that activated on my account a long time ago for drops. I don't know where. I'm sure where my drops are. Oh, here they are. These are the drops right here. Like they have tons of drops that are available, and I have drops turned on. So anytime you want to grab drops on my channel, if I'm playing the appropriate game, I'm always available for drops. So they're probably going to be doing drops again as well if they're doing the streamer thing. So I would assume drops. And then Adam went back into some more stuff. So let's go take a look at some of this other stuff here. Well, they talked about snapshotting, and then trying to think if they had any more graphics over here. There was some cool stuff we can go over for the Sensual. In fact, I think we've covered enough of this. Let's go back to the Sensual, because they actually did show quite a bit of the Sensual's equipments. They have the quest line, of course, with dodging the traps. This is the new boss. They said he's going to be a stationary boss, and I was actually pretty interested in this. So he's not going to move. He's stuck in the center of the arena, and he basically attacks you with big giant traps and like AoE attacks and, you know, projectiles and things like that. And so the fight's going to be a little bit different than the normal fights that we do. They said there's also going to be a kind of like a gate town, kind of like a hub, which is going to have a place where you can go to sell equipment. Portals apparently go everywhere, so that you know, there's kind of like a central area that you can, you know, participate in. It sounds kind of neat. I mean, a central hub area does sound kind of cool. Let's find the constructs here. So the construct is this little spider. You can actually pet the spider, which is honestly pretty cool, not gonna lie. Even if he has a metal spider and can't feel any of it. And where is the? I'm looking for the little tidbits. They had a they actually showed quite a bit of them. So this is the panel, and let me move myself out of the way of the panel because it's Mr. Nimoy. Why do you got to be on my head? Well, you're not a hat, sir. You're not a hat. Whether you think you're a hat or not, you're not a hat. So how it basically works is you've got 2 main doojanks, okay? So each one of these is a main doojank, and those main doojanks are basically what give you your actual powers that the Sensual is capable of. These three are the governing stones that basically, or the tuning stones, that basically beef up this ability, right? So your entire goal is to choose the powers that you want your Sensual to have, and then customize those powers using the tuning stones. And they said that there's 12, but there's actually 14 governing stones, or sorry, 12 governing stones, and I think like 27 tuning stones, and 2 of them are apparently hidden, which they talked about earlier, but they actually had some of them equipped. Something called Eternity, and another one that was kind of new. And he actually hovers over some of them here. So hold on, let me... So this one is the Focus Fire, which is the central construct, channels a ray of fire onto targets, dealing 7,657 total damage to each over 2.5 seconds. And then has like a total damage. It also has a rank here. It says progress 20 out of 40 until rank 6. And then up here it says rank 5 out of 10. So it looks like you can rank up each stone to 10. And then on top of that, he also hovers over some of these other ones, which are the tuning stones. And see if I can pull these up. We're gonna take a look at some of these tuning stones. So this is the gripping support. Damage and effects done by the supporting skill to distant enemies pulls them toward the central construct and can only occur once every 18 seconds. So we get an 18-second pull in basically, and this is a rank 2. As you can see here, it says next rank. It decreases the pull in, so that's really interesting. And then over here we've got the supported skills effect size increased by 44%, and the size of the effect increases with each rank, so we've got 47%. And then I'm pretty sure he goes over a couple more. This one is electrocution support. 50% of the supported skills damage dealt is applied as lightning damage over 5 seconds, and has a 10% chance to stun enemies for 2 seconds. And then the stun chance goes up per rank. And then we have poison support, which is 50% of the supported skills dealt as poison damage over 5 seconds. And the poison has a 14% chance each second to spread all poison damage to an additional enemy. This could be really useful for characters that need poison damage to trigger their effects. And then we got registered support damage. This is the one that's kind of like the Barber Gem from Season 1, if you guys hadn't seen it. Any damage caused from the supported skill is registered. The registered damage explodes at 34% effectiveness when the target dies as fire damage. So basically this gathers up all the damage that you do, and then once it reaches whatever the threshold is, explodes and hits everything around you in a circle. So it's this one definitely is pretty nice. Probably going to be a very useful one. And then we have the initiative support. The supported skill will cause the central construct to teleport to the target if out of range, can only occur once every 7 seconds. So that decreases the amount of time it takes. So it goes down to 6. I'm assuming it goes down 1 second each tier, and it's currently at rank 3. So what is that? They go in there then. Jeez. So 7 seconds. So you can get it down to probably like close to 1 second or something like that, because going up from 3 to 4 brings it to 6. So 4 to 5 must be 5. 5 to 6 must be 4, and so forth and so on until it eventually gets down to 1 second. So maybe teleporting pretty fast. Damage and effects done by supporting skill to distant enemies. So that's the gripping one again. That's the Vulminous. We had another one there. I missed it. Duration support. So this one increases supported duration of skills have their durations increased by 1.2 seconds. Looks like it goes up by 0.4 each time. So we're looking at what is that? 1.2. So 1.6, and then that would bring it up to 2, and then 2.4, and then 2.8. So it looks like you could probably get it to somewhere like 3 or 4 seconds, like maxed out increase in the duration, which certainly doesn't sound terrible. This is the arcing one that makes it so the skill can hit 7 additional enemies, and the ranking it up actually increases the number of enemies. He already has it at rank 7 though, so it's currently at 8 enemies. So I'm assuming It would go to 9, 10, 11, right? So 11 enemies is the maximum that it would be able to hit or arc to. And this is a ranged ability, so basically what he's doing is he's setting up this ability for ranged. Let's see if we see any of the other ones. He also has Lightning Bolt over here. And this is basically he set up the channeling ability to arc, so you can see the channeling ability arcing in between all the monsters. So there's definitely a lot of fun ways that you can set up the abilities on the little robot spider. In this particular case, you can see he's used the multi-shot on the spider, so he has multiple projectiles. And it looks like he's also using the pierce, so it's piercing through the enemy when it hits him. So he's getting the multi-shot and the pierce at the same time on the Sensual, which makes for a very nice wide AoE attack, which is going to hit multiple targets. I think that's pretty much all they showed us on the Sensual. I mean, for the most part, when it comes to the Sensual, it definitely looks interesting. They also talked about these more kind of like rare construct enemies. Like, as you can see here, this is one of the, it almost looks like a scorpion, like a construct scorpion that we're going to have to fight. And apparently they're supposed to have, you know, more deadly attacks than some of the others. On top of this, there's also going to be special dungeons full of traps that we have to go through. I'm assuming that the traps probably one-shot you or nearly one-shot you if they hit you. They also talked about getting Pearls of Warding, which basically enabled you to just kind of like eat one trap. So if you don't want to, you know, like get hit by a trap or you feel like you can't make it through, you can potentially use that Pearl of Warding to protect yourself from a trap for that particular time period. But apparently the more Pearls of Warding that you have, you know, like unused at the end of a dungeon, the higher the rewards will be. So I guess we'll see. As you can see, it's quite the gauntlet here in this particular room with rotating fire, traps on the ground that are constantly, you know, popping up. And yeah, I would also assume that the traps are probably a little bit bigger than they actually look like, because God knows that Blizzard can't get the hitboxes right on anything. So I would go into this season assuming that the traps are larger than they actually appear. And give them a wide berth, because if you don't, there's a very good chance you might end up getting hit by a trap that you're not standing on or not standing near. It seems like pretty much every AoE effect, for the most part in Diablo 2, is about like 10% bigger. I would say about 10% bigger than the visual actually indicates. And then of course these are the chests at the end. Apparently you get either one or multiple chests depending on how well you do. You always get one, but depending on how well you do, you may get more chests, depending on how many Pearls of Warding you have at the end of the dungeon, apparently. And then they also talked about the leaderboards and the gauntlet. They didn't really have much information to show us on the gauntlet, except for that basically it was going to be a timed event, obviously. It was also going to have us collecting proofs of might. They did show us that there was a boss at the beginning of the dungeon, but they did actually state that the boss was not restricted to this room, and that you could actually drag the boss with you and fight him as you go. So you could literally just take this boss with you, fight other monsters at the same time that you're fighting the boss, which may actually make the boss easier to kill for some density clear characters, because you could drag the boss into specific zones with large amounts of monsters and use the density clear powers to dish out massive amounts of damage. They also talked about these special stones that can multiply your score, apparently. And you could potentially drag the boss, one of them said, to the stone, use the stone, and then kill the boss while having the stone active, and get more points for killing the boss accordingly. They also stated that there was going to be multiple pathways to go through the gauntlet, and that the multiple pathways may result in, you know, like one pathway being more optimal for one class, and another pathway maybe being more optimal for another. And apparently every week the gauntlet will change slightly, and it will be a little bit different for each class. So you may have to find new pathways through the dungeon each week to figure out where you're going. And then they also talked about the leaderboards themselves. So let's see if I can find the. There we go. So the leaderboards themselves are going to be separated by class with no all leaderboard. So apparently, they're unlike in Diablo 2, which has a category for all. There's not going to be a category for all, apparently, is what they're saying. There's going to be a category one for each class. So the classes are going to compete against each other. So like Druid will compete against other Druids, Necromancer against other Necromancers, and so forth and so on. And then there will also be team-based competition. So 2-player, 3-player, and 4-player competition in that particular regard. And apparently it's going to go up to 1,000 players, is what they said. However, there will be a permanent list that is going to be far less than 1,000. So, like, I don't think they actually said exactly how many, but like, say, like the top 100 will be permanently listed on the leaderboards forever. So, anytime you want to look back at like season 3 leaderboards, even when we're in like season 6, the top players will be on that list. Forever. They also talked about these like seals that you can get, the seals of the worthy and things like that will kind of like be like stepping stones within the leaderboard, perhaps even for the more like the less skilled players, essentially giving them something to do, even if they can't particularly place on the leaderboards. They did also talk about how the gauntlets were going to be set and not random. So this is kind of important, is that, well, it's like most dungeons kind of have like a randomness to them. Every time you go in, they're a little bit different than the last time you went in. The monsters might be in a different place. The boss might be in a different place. The doors, are different places. With this particular dungeon, the Gauntlet, what they're saying is it's going to be the same dungeon, the same pathways every single time. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want players to try and plot optimal routes and try and figure out the best way to go through so they can try and get the highest score. Obviously, there are going to be optimal routes within each time they activate the gauntlet, and as you try and figure out the optimal routes to take, you're going to get a higher and higher score and place higher and higher on the leaderboard. It's not just about speed; it's also about killing capacity, because of course, completing it in a certain time, while that is good, you also need to kill monsters, both apparently bosses and monsters, like just like trash mobs, most likely elites and everything else. So it seems like you're going to have to be good at two things, not just single target damage, but also group clear speed, because not only do you have to take out large groups of monsters, but you also have to be able to take out bosses relatively quickly. And they didn't exactly state how many bosses would be in the dungeon, but like, for instance, in this particular case, there was a boss directly at the beginning of the dungeon, which was a Tomb Lord, which I kind of laughed as everybody kind of like sighed to see a Tomb Lord again, because all the Tomb Lords do is blind you over and over again, which is really annoying. But it's kind of interesting, though, that they're allowing the bosses to kind of like have free roam of the dungeon. It's interesting. We're going to get patch notes tomorrow, they said. They did talk about that. So patch notes are coming on the 19th. And we'll be going over those tomorrow. I'm sure they're going to give us a much more detailed look at a lot of the changes that they've made. And I think we've pretty much covered everything. They did talk about the season journey. I just remembered about this. So basically, they were talking about like PvP objectives and some of the objectives in the season journey that basically no one ever did. So they kind of been paying attention, is what they're saying, and they looked at the objectives for the season journey, and they're like, okay, nobody is doing this objective. Like, pretty much nobody ever completes this objective. So they're reworking or removing a lot of the objectives that nobody's been doing. And then they also talked about the PvP objectives, which apparently nobody was doing either. I'm not really sure why, because every season journey, I just go do the PvP objectives really quickly. It takes like 10, 20 minutes, if that. Like I go hostile my friend and we duel each other until both of us have a kill, and then, you know, like whatever. But I can definitely understand why some people didn't like the PvP objectives. And apparently some of the objectives were a little too out there for some people. Like, I think they said something about like killing Uber Lilith. And although Uber Lilith is pretty easy once you get your character fully set up, she definitely is on the more difficult side for a, you know, like a season objective. They also talked about how during the seasons, a lot of the times the quests would require you to complete the season journey. Like, you know, it would literally just say complete season 3 journey to continue on the, you know, like on the quest line. Well, they're kind of taking that away. They realized that was kind of stupid to force you to have to complete the season journey to continue in the quest line. So they said they're no longer going to require you to complete the season journey to continue the quest, you know, the season quest, which is interesting. I think that's pretty much it. They did show cosmetics. They've got a new town portal, which, funny enough, they were like, and the red town portal was the most popular, and we don't know why. And I'm like, it's literally red like the cow level. Diablo 2, red, cow level portal. It looked like the cow portal. Like, it wasn't exactly like the cow portal in Diablo 2, but it was close enough that literally people really enjoyed seeing something that resembled the Diablo 2 cow portal. So they've got like some new mounts and mount armor. They got like the clockwork mount, which is like a robot with like a like fire in his tummy kind of thing going on, where he's like probably steam powered or something. They got the awoken armor set. I swear the armor sets and stuff in this season kind of remind me of the Dwemer from Skyrim. Don't they remind you guys of like the Dwemer? Like, doesn't that look like a Dwemer helmet? Like, hold on, let me pull up a Dwemer helmet from Skyrim real quick. Hold on. And let's compare real quick, because I swear it looks like a Dwemer helmet. All right, this is a Dwemer helmet right here. All right, you tell me that doesn't look very similar. You tell me that doesn't look very similar to what we're looking at. And then on top of that, there's also like the big giant Dwemer robot. Well, I can't remember what he was called. The Sentinel or whatever. Was it called a Sentinel? What the hell was that big giant monster called? I can't even remember what the hell he was called. Centurion? It was a Centurion. Okay, let me look up. Centurion. Yeah, here we go. Here's the big giant Centurion monster. Are you ready? This one looks even more like the dude. Like, it literally just looks like freaking like they ripped off Skyrim. Look at this. Tell me that doesn't look exactly like my boy here. Look, he even has the circle thing on his chest. Look, circle thing, circle thing. Ugly looking face, ugly looking face. Roundy topped head, roundy topped head. Spike on the top of his head, spike on the top of his head. He looks exactly the same. Dude, it's Season of the Dwemer, boys. I'm gonna make a meme. I'm gonna make a meme thumbnail that has like this. It's gonna be like Season of the Dwemer, and it's gonna have like a Skyrim Centurion here. Boys. Oh wait, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. You guys remember this guy? You guys remember this guy, right? We've got a spider. I don't know if you know this, but there's a quest within Skyrim. It's a quest to have a dwarven spider pet in Skyrim. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen him. It's actually a real thing. It's a pet that you can get that you can actually customize with various types of like spells and other things, and he follows you around. And it's straight up a actual pet that you can have within the game. And this was ages ago. It was part of like the Elder Scrolls Skyrim like DLC or something. I can't remember which one. If you go over to Kagramez and you complete the trial, you get this pet. It's actually a pet. My freaking lights decided to spaz out on me. Dude, I'm telling you, man, like this season literally looks like they just decided to rip off some Skyrim. Like they got the spider pet, they got the literally like the Centurions, the constructs, like the whole Dwemer civilization was built around like the Centurions and stuff like that. And we're literally looking at like almost the identical thing. I mean, it was cool. I'm not gonna lie. I'll give it what it's worth. It was cool. Having the little pet follow you around and being able to customize them a little bit was definitely neat. And they've definitely gone leagues past the customization that you could do in Skyrim. But it's, yeah. I mean, it really kind of looks like Season of the Dwemer, like in Diablo 4. We got Season of the Dwemer. They're even under the ground. We've got like construct horses and like all sorts of other crazy stuff. I mean, it's actually pretty silly. I actually really like the spider pet from Skyrim too. So the spider pet in this game will probably be pretty fun as well. It probably will. Where's the little spider? There he is, right there. See the little Dwemer spider? I mean, the little Sensual construct. Totally not a dwarven spider. Totally not a dwarven spider. Totally not. All right, guys and gals. I think that's pretty much it for today. I am going to be doing a live stream later today. A fun little game. It was a request from one of my viewers. It's called. I kind of thought it was a hentai at first. I'm not even going to lie. When he requested it, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I can't be doing hentais on stream. But it's called Day of the Tentacle. And I have it scheduled for later today. Let me pull up an image of Day of the Tentacle. But if you guys want to join me for that, that's going to be around like 6 p.m. today. And we're going to play a little bit of Day of the Tentacle for fun. It's an older game. It came out in like 1993, and I see Anna Cake is live over here. We rated Anna with like 5,000 viewers. What was it? It's Night of the Tentacle. Sorry, Night of the Tentacle remaster. It's a point-and-click adventure from LucasArts from like 1993. It looks pretty fun. You guys want to join me for that later today. And of course, tomorrow we're going to be doing the patch notes, so stay tuned for that. I also may have something very special for you guys tomorrow. I'll give you guys a little bit of a hint. I had an idea on making a piece of music out of the sound effects of Diablo 2, you know, like picking up a rune, picking up a gem, picking up, putting down a piece of armor, you know, the really iconic skull noise and rune noises and things like that. Making a piece of music out of those sound effects. And I should have it finished by tomorrow. So if you're lucky, tomorrow when I do the patch notes, I'll also have some pretty fun music for you guys to listen to. And of course, it'll be up on its own video as well, so that you guys can listen to it on your own. I may even put it up on Spotify if you guys really like it, so you can purchase your own copy of it. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for those fun little adventures, even though we're just watching a developer live stream. And I hope you'll join me later. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.